Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, respected chairman, sir. Thanks to the organizer for giving me chance in this platform to present my topic. Is it now visible?
Yes, Abhayda, it's visible.
Oh. Okay, so thank you. I am going to present my paper on riverine embankments, challenges and adaptation. The topic is so simple, as I also simply going to present my observations based on two research works. One I have done very early, that the coastal embankments, waterfront embankments, and another project work was the environmental significance of waterlogged areas. Both work have been done in the district of Purbo Medinipur, West Bengal, and I am trying to present within the due time, obviously. And this platform, basically, there are so many geomorphologists here, or hardcore geomorphologists in front of them. I am going to present my paper basically from the environmental perspective, considering both physical and socioeconomic environment. First of all, what is embankment? All we know that conventionally embankment are the artificial earthen mound built to support a road or to control movement of water. When we talk about the riverine embankments, then basically the purpose of construction is to control the movement of water, and then people move over the embankments. And these are generally the man-made features, and there are some natural features like natural levee along the rivers, and that natural levee is also modified by the people, and then these are considered as embankments. These are also known as dikes in many papers, and also in sometimes it is also considered as dikes. This is the just engineering aspect of a riverine dike or embankment. The engineers generally consider the full supply level. This is the level up to which water is normally remain, and then there is high flood level. This is the level of water during normally the monsoon season or rainy season, and above this level, engineers take one freeboard, that is 1 feet 6 inches to 1 inch normally, that fix the height of any embankment along any river. And there another thing is very important, that is called hydraulic gradient line. It is very important in this sense. The intersecting point from the high flood level towards the riverine side to the countryside, the slope will remain 1:6, 1 vertical and 6 horizontal distance. And they try to remain the countryside intersecting point to the land within the embankment, so that during high flood level, the embankment will be very hard, that will not be devastated very easily. And if there is some economic problem to build so large embankment, they will construct a berm towards the countryside. In this way, they generally construct an embankment. And they, based on these type of construction, engineers normally divide the embankments as low embankment, height up to 3 meters, medium embankment, height up to 3 to 9 meters, and high embankment above the 9 meters. All we know, this is very general information, that maximum people live in the riverine or sea coastal areas, because the resources are very easily we can just get very easily in these regions. But there are so many questions in the context of waterfront embankments in the coastal area. Generally, waterfront embankments are now becoming an environmental issue, because in the context of global warming and sea level changes, when we consider these things, that should embankments able to save coastal lands after sea level changes. Generally, there are also questions arised as that why are embankments constructed? Are embankments desired to construct? How are embankments becoming a part and parcel of our environment? Actually, there is a very general debate between environmentalists and economists, between environmental protection versus economic development. Embankments are the product of economic development. Environmentalists generally choice there is no any embankment along the river basin because river flows very normally and the hard water goes towards the both sides of the river, and that deposited seals and their agricultural production will be very high. This type of issue also we see in Bardhaman district many years ago when Damodar were embanked, and due to the lack of sealed agriculture production was very low, and the local people cut off the embankments to enter the water into their lands. So that type of things also we observe. The main purpose of the embankment construction is to protect the riparian lands from the hard water and also intrusion of tidal water. So, economic point of view, embankments are desired, but from the environmental point of view, embankments are not desired. According to them, that embankments cannot save the area from the sea level rising or that type of things also in future. So, actually, embankments are not very current thing. These are very old age method to protect the lands from the hard water, and embankments have the spatial signature as well as also temporal significance. These are things of the research work. Embankment basically important for the flood mitigation system, and it is a very popular measure of flood mitigation system. And there again another debate between environmentalists and also economists that normally what type of embankments are desired. According to environmentalists, that eco-friendly embankments made by the local soil and covered by the vegetation, that type of embankments are desirable. But economists or sometimes local people demand that concrete embankments are to save the lands from the flood water. So, but that hampered so many micro level biodiversity, and so many issues also arise if concrete embankments breached, then what will be happen in that area. So another thing is in this context is important, that is the vulnerability of embankments, because vulnerability affects the development of socio-economic process of an area that pulls back the area to, that economic development will be hampered if embankment breached. So these are the defense works of the embankments. Now, in the context of sea level rising, all we know this general information that according to IPCC, the rate of sea level rising is 0.4 millimeter per year, and also India's second national communication report, NATCOM, that is, it is 1.3 millimeter per year along the eastern coast of India. So the red zones are very much vulnerable to the sea level rising. One paper has published, and they map this thing as well. So one thing, another again important, why embankments in the context of sea level rising, how it is important, because riverine embankments practically important. If the sea level rises, then the coastal areas are not affected first, because these the coastal lands, if you go to the Gopalpur Sea or if you go to the Digha, that the coastal lands is something high than the just behind the area. There is an undulating type of surface we found. So the water entered into the low-lying areas through rivers. So in these areas will be devastated faster. So there are so many projections in this regard. So embankments are desired or not desired, that type of debate is continuing in this context, obviously. So another thing, with flood, embankments are also important in the context of waterlogging. When you construct embankment to protect the land from the flood water, but in the low-lying areas where the area is depressed, like a trough region, there again creates the accumulated water as like a geohydrological hazard like water congestion. So these two things, just two sides of the embankment we observed. So this is Purbo Medinipur district. Here is Purbo Medinipur district. Basically, it's a very plain land. There is no undulation generally found. And from the topographical sheet, just I prepared this. This is the rainfall in the Purbo Medinipur district. Very high rainfall we observed in this district. And here it's a land use land cover map. Here is Holdia, one of the very significant for the purpose of protection is required from the river water. Here is Holdia. Here is Tomluk town. From the administrative point of view, it is important to protect this town. And just towards the very low line, there is Digha, though it is on the sea coastal side. Other areas, maximum are rural areas in this district, and the rivers are like, here is Rupnarayan river, and after meeting Rupnarayan with Hooghly at Geumkhali, the Hooghly estuary is started. There is Holdi river, and upper side is Keleghai river, and there is Kongsaboti river, just eastern side of the Moyna. And very low side up to the Hooghly estuary is situated up to the Rasulpur river. Here is Rasulpur river. Others are maximum canals we found in this district. So if we consider the history of embankments, because to understand the challenges, the significance of embankment, it is important here also. Pre-British period embankments, British period embankments, and post-British period embankments. There are so many classifications we observed. The first classification happened in 1839 to 40, where the riverine embankments are the nomenclature of riverine embankments as was like the local, using the local language, that Gangu Ria Bandi. Another Hunter's classification of 1876, he mentioned that the challenge of embankment is to protect the riparian lands from the invasion of saline tidal and flood water. He also considered so many riverfront embankments as like right bank of Rupnarayan, Hijili, Holdi river embankment, Kasai, etc. Another classification we see from the 1902 to 3, that is the classification of embankments from the administrative point of view, that embankments of the private property, that type of things, and embankments captured by the government, and nomenclature is as that schedule A, B, C, D, that type of thing. Harrison considered these nomenclatures, that schedule A, B, C, D, and he also classified and mentioned different types of embankments, canal embankments, river embankments, that type of things. Here the highlighted names are the riverine embankments. Again, English 1909, he also mentioned and classified different types of embankments, and two types of embankments. One is circuit embankment, another is continuous embankment. Generally, circuit embankments are found circling a low-lying area, very tough region. That type of land use we observed in this district. Very famous definition and famous classification made by O'Malley, 1911. He mentioned that like Holland, the embankment system he observed in this district, and he mentioned that it's a system, embankment system. It is not a single thing. It is not a single entity. Embankments are very much related with other things, and he mentioned as it is a palbandhi. And he also considered the terms from the first classification of the embankments. He made different types of, and he categorized embankments into different types based on purposes and also uses. So in the pre-British period, embankments mainly constructed in this district by the jamindars and to meet the local needs. And there was no engineering method properly followed to construct the embankments and to protect the lands from saline tidal and flood water intrusion. Next, the British period. They actually made the continuous embankments in collaboration with the jamindars, because their aim was to collect more revenue from the protected agricultural lands. And they follow the engineering methods properly. When we see the great sea dike in Purbo Medinipur district, then we observe that how much engineering things they followed and what was the concept. So in this context, another thing is very important, that there is a political significance of embankments. British, during that period, actually the total southern part of Bengal was known as Nimok Mahal, because so many areas were engaged to produce the salt. And in Purbo Medinipur district, during that time, we see that the Tamrolipto, the salt areas and Kontai belts. But what happened during that time, in Medinipur, so many people were against the Britishers, so they protect the lands by the amendments, by saying that we protect the land for agricultural purposes. But they hampered the economic process, that salt manufacturing in these areas, because the salt water cannot penetrate into the land, so they cannot produce salt anymore. And they actually support the Odisha people to manufacture more salts, because they were very much friend of that British period people
Hello,
during
Avoida.
that time. So okay.
হ্যালো অভয়দা, আই এম এক্সট্রিমলি সরি, আসলে এই বাজে কাজটা আমাকেই তো করতে হচ্ছে। আপনারা 2 মিনিটের মধ্যে একটু শেষ করলে ভালো হয়।
Already time 20 minutes happened.
18 মিনিট, 18 minutes.
Okay. Just okay. So in this way, there are also embankment system is connected with the political system. After British period, so many embankments are also constructed in this district. Okay, this map shows the British and British period embankments. Flood embankments generally to protect the flood areas. Okay, these are the temporal vulnerable pockets of the embankments. Engineering condition, this map shows surface condition of these embankments, economic significance. These are different types of embankments in this district. And finally, some outcomes we observed, and final conclusion I will say again. These are the protective measurements of the embankments here we observed. Water logging condition in Purbo Medinipur, and also one study in the Moina to observe the water logging condition, which is created by the system or encircled by different types of embankments. Finally, in the context of adaptation, actually sustainable development, for the purpose of sustainable development, embankment system is very much desired, and embankments create on the one hand brick clean is also we found on the riverine side of the embankments. And again, the negative impact of embankments, that is drainage congestion, it also creates the fishery fields for the fishing activity. So we may follow the micro level and macro level adaptation strategies to protect the land, also the embankments. Finally, so conclusion, natural environmental system of the low-lying areas is characterized by flooding during tides and or during rainy season. When people entered into the system, it has been modified. They constructed embankments along the rivers, creeks, and canals to protect their agricultural fields, settlements, etc. from the flooding. Embankment is also used as the means of transportation. There are several functions of the embankments in our socio-economic environment. Number 2, there are several vulnerable pockets are found in the embankment system. Vulnerability shows malfunctioning toward the nature. Embankments are imposed feature on the open low-lying environmental system. If you think to maintain the natural environmental balance, then any type of embankment is not desirable. But truth is that to save our human lives, property and assets, construction and maintenance of the riverfront embankments in the low-lying floodplain areas cannot be ignored. Due to this fact, embankment system is regarded as an environmental issue. Finally, embankments disturb the natural environmental system. Natural flooding has been transferred into man-made flooding. They are not desirable to save our low-lying floodplain natural environment. But from the socio-economic environmental perspective, it is required, though flooding leads to disturbances in our socio-economic environment as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Avoida. Once again, I am sorry for interfering in your presentation.
No, it's okay. I can understand that time.
Yes, sir.
Though we are running out of time, I think at the end of each presentation, we should invite at least one question to make just one question. And the next speaker, please curtail some of your time. Please, one question, please. At least
okay, if any one of you have any question, so you can go ahead.
And the next presenter should get ready. So no question, I think. Next.
Okay, the participants, if you
have a little room for one question. Thank you.
Okay, one thing, participants, if you have any question later, if it comes into your mind, you can type in the chat box, so we can take that afterwards. So the next honorable speaker amongst us is Dr. Dipannita Dotto. She is working as an assistant professor in the Department of Remote Sensing and GIS, Vidyasagar University, West Bengal. The topic on which she is going to present her paper is Paleorivers and Geoarchaeology, exploring the potentiality of advanced remote sensing techniques. So without wasting any further time, so may I invite Dr. Dipannita Dotto to present her paper. Hello, madam, you can start.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes. Good afternoon.
So, madam, please try to complete in 20 minutes.
Okay, sure. Good afternoon, the chairperson and the distinguished speakers and the participants of this program. I'd like to thank the organizer for giving me such a nice opportunity to share my views and ideas on paleorivers and geoarchaeology. So I'm going to start now because we are running in a shortage of time. So I'm starting. Paleorivers or paleochannel is the remnant of a river channel which are abundant by the current river and buried by sediments in different form of deposition, which is different from the deposition of current river bed. And this is significant because for identification of different archaeological sites as well as different features, artifacts, and these paleochannels cannot be identified by by our eyes, but it can be identified through advanced remote sensing techniques. So, considering the significance of river to the growth of civilization and the evolution of settlements, identification of paleochannels has become important in archaeological studies. And in this context, remote sensing can play a crucial role in exploring and mapping paleochannels. However, the conventional techniques used for identifying paleochannels and using the optical data sets, these are not sufficient for identification and accurate mapping of the paleochannel, especially those buried under sand cover for a long time. That cannot be identified from a standard false color composite image. And along with this, the shifting of river channel. This is a geomorphological process that occurs when the river changes its course and flows through a new channel. It affects the land use, land covers and settlements on the floodplain to a great extent. So with the migration of river channel pattern of settlement, there's a settlement changes over time. The evidences of channel migration provides a hint for identifying old settlements, and thus it can be used for establishing the linkage between locations of archaeological sites and the riverine settlements. Now, geoarchaeology, another term, it is a very well-used term which indicates a multi-proxy approach where geographical and geoscientific concepts and methods are applied to prehistory, archaeology, and history. And it refers to how modern archaeologists assess, interpret, analyze, and experience ancient landscapes in their modern forms. So it covers the invasive as well as non-invasive ways in which archaeologists can obtain different kinds of data. Now, these geoarchaeological features and paleochannels that can be identified through remote sensing. How we can visualize the surface features of an archaeological site through just simple optical imagery. Here we can use the high resolution images, and we can extract different distinct archaeological features by analyzing the signatures collected through through multispectral as well as hyperspectral data sets, and also the surveying through GPS or DGPS, and also we can integrate this information with high resolution imageries, and this can be used for mapping and digital documentation of archaeological sites. Paleo river identification is another part of this geoarchaeological studies. Now, here, an integrated part of this geospatial techniques, that is GIS, it helps us for 3D modeling of present and past environment, especially how the relief, hydrology, shoreline, and vegetation cover was there in ancient time, and how it has been evaluated. And we can cross compare the environmental, paleo-environmental, and archaeological data. And we also also integrate information collected through leader, and we can use this leader based information for building a 3D model. Now these geoarchaeological variables can be identified through remote sensing. Environmental variables like elevation, aspect, slope, distance from water sources, geology and rock types, and as well as cultural variables like distance to the main settlement and ancient road proximity. And all these variables can be integrated, and we can use spatial decision analysis technique, or this SDSS for integrating all these features and identifying the potential location of different ancient sites, ancient settlements. The remote sensing data sets, which are generally used for these studies, like Landsat. Landsat is their series of data set we can obtain from Landsat series, IRS series, resource at spot data sets, as well as Sentinel data sets, which is available from 2015. This kind of data sets we can use, as well as we can integrate different high resolution data sets like Iconos, QuickBird, Worldview, Cartosat 1 and 2, and as well as GeoEye and Pleiades. ComSat is also available in different resolution. Now, for the information during Cold War, like 1960s to 1972, it can be obtained through corona datasets. This corona datasets has been popularly used for archaeological studies, and this is the first space-borne platform, which was introduced in 1959, when the initial satellite under the Corona satellite program was launched by the United States military, and its primary mission was to monitor Soviet missile strength, and it was a huge success. Even though it was the earliest Earth imaging satellite instrument, its products were not available to the public or to the archaeologists until President Clinton of US declassified the mission's products on 1995. And this classification led to the use of corona data in the later 1990s to examine landscapes and ancient cities of different places like Turkey, Euphrates Valley, and in Syria too. And the Corona satellite program's imaging instruments are photographic cameras placed into space. And once the camera had used up its film, the film was returned to Earth in a capsule via parachute, and then after that it was transformed. And here you can see the parachute coming from this plane, and then this corona photograph here, this image, it actually shows the long wall of the central Vietnam, which is not clearly visible to our eyes, but it can be identified if we check the corona images of that time. Now, another geospatial technique, advanced geospatial technique, which is used very popularly, that is shuttle imaging radar. It has very unique properties because radar data can help us to identify the buried features, subsurface buried features. Radar imagery actually is sensitive to evidence of human occupation, such as remains of walls, multitemporal radar coverage, and coverage at multiple wavelengths and polarization are available for some areas, and from which we can derive vegetation characteristics too. And depending on observational parameters, interferometric synthetic aperture radar data can provide topographic data, or it can measure the subtle topographic changes occurring in the time interval between observations. It has unique properties, like it can penetrate the soil of hyper-arid environments when we are using longer wavelengths. The penetration depth is on the order of several wavelengths in this environment. But as soil moisture increases, the soil becomes increasingly opaque. So it is very useful for identifying the buried features under desert or dry sands. The backscatter imagery can sometimes reveal features slightly below the surface, so it helps to identify the buried subsurface features like walls and other man-made structures. Here you can see the SAR datasets, which are popularly used for different archaeological studies. Radarsat, RISAT is there, and also Sentinel-1A, 1B is also applied very popularly. And then application of hyperspectral remote sensing. Hyperspectral remote sensing is very useful, especially for identifying the accurate signature from different features which are having archaeological relevance. So unlike the multispectral datasets, which can provide the signatures in a few bands, and this hyperspectral technique can help us to identify unique and I mean the features which are not visible in broad spectrums, broad multispectral spectrums. So here we can through these hyperspectral techniques, we can identify crop marks as well as soil marks of an area, and these crop marks and soil marks helps us to identify different archaeological features. These crop marks on an FCC identify areas where the vegetation cover differs from its immediate surroundings. And the negative crop marks indicate that the local vegetation is stressed in contrast to surrounding growth that is healthier. And at such places, there is a possibility of buried structure that prevent roots of surface vegetation from reaching water and nutrients adequately. So these negative crop marks helps us to identify the buried features under a cropland. And this clearly manifests as a lighter tone of red in standard false color composite, or with a lower NDVI value in digital data. And the positive crop mark, it corresponds to the areas with richer soil and or enhanced moisture content. It allows vegetation to prosper. So such features in an FCC can also identify areas associated with the ancient settlements. But these positive and negative crop marks may be difficult to identify in certain weather conditions, like shortly after heavy rainfall, or where the variability in soil moisture content may be reduced. And so it is therefore advisable to examine FCCs corresponding to different seasons, so we can reduce the variability in soil moisture, and thereby we can identify the actual positive or negative crop marks. And the soil marks, it also helps us to understand the archaeological structures, like especially in arid lands with little or no plant cover. It normally show bare soil with uniform color. However, sometimes the soil does show different color marks in an otherwise homogeneous land parcel, and such variations are generally caused by differences in mineral and organic content of the soil. And these differences in mineral and organic content of the soil that can be due to the buried features under soil. So in addition, this buried ditch fillings can sometimes show distinct marks because of differences in moisture content. such signatures can indicate the existence of ancient ruined dwellings. So this kind of soil marks was explored in near Kutch, Gujarat, and there was an archaeological site, and these soil marks helps the authors to identify different archaeological significant sites near this area. And another
Hello, madam.
important, yes.
Sorry to interfere, but actually you have 2 minutes more.
Okay. And another important part that we all know that DEM, we can use AstaDEM, SRTM and as well as the Cartosat DEM is also available. And through this digital elevation model, we can identify the topography, and from the topography, from the 3D topographic view, we can identify if there is any mold or any tomb monuments are there, and we can also identify the spatial patterns. Now, LIDAR data is being increasingly used for archaeological sites. You can identify the monuments and few molds in over a agricultural land, and it can be easily identified through the 3D as a 3D model as well as the hillside view of LIDAR data. And also this is an example of reservoir of Mayan civilization, and this here you can see easily from the hillside view of LIDAR data that how how the reservoir look like and the shape of this reservoir, as well as the 2D LIDAR bare earth visualization of the cross section of this point. So this LIDAR data actually helps us to identify the shape and the size of different archaeologically significant features. And it is also supported by a GPS platform that records the position and orientation of the data acquisition. And this technique facilitates the visualization and characterization of different objects, morphologies, and patterns observed in the topography, regardless of the angle of illumination or the presence of vegetation. So when the laser beam finds an obstacle such as a tree leaf or any branches, the signal is reflected and the sensor records the reflected pulse perpendicular to the direction of flight. The GPR based survey is also an advanced technique for identifying different buried structures, and this GPR can be used for prospecting in order to assess the extent of buried features across different sites, archaeological significant sites. Here you can see a trough that is indicated by an anomaly shown by a collapsed and sunken structural phase, and the other three profiles here you can see shown in different grids, which are actually denotes single wall which having more intersections and also forming a part of the dwelling, and the compacted surface that could have been used as walkways, that is shown in grid 4. And paleo channel identification. By paleo channels can be easily identified through ISAT data as well as RadarSat data, as I already have mentioned. Here you can see an example of Jaisalmer district, Rajasthan, where the paleo channels under the desert has been identified through optical as well as SAR images, and these optical data and SAR images are merged together, and then this merged data sets helps to clearly identify the paleo rivers in the desert. And another example where the RadarSat data has been used for identifying a buried channel near Mysore, and these area also surveyed through a GPS, and the paleo channels here identified through different studies. It also helped us to identify the channel shifting. By using the multi-temporal satellite data sets as well as and integrating the SAR data sets, we can identify the paleo channels as well as the shifting of channel. So the paleo channels often have more subsurface moisture than their immediate surroundings, which results in a distinct signature, a channel with a red king in an FCC. So if we see FCC image, then we can identify this, but not clearly. So we have to use the SAR data sets for identifying paleo channels buried under dry sand. But sometimes this such kind of paleo channels which are buried under
Madam, your
dry
time
sand.
is over. Please,
Okay.
you can end it.
Okay, I'm
Actually.
just. So this space-borne remote sensing data can provide us a synoptic coverage, so that we can identify archaeological sites and different artifacts, and we can identify pattern, and we can integrate microwave data as well as digital elevation model and leader data sets for a detailed survey of a larger area. And the ground survey is also essential for the archaeologists, because without ground survey we can't get the ground truth. So but it is also not possible for anyone to survey a large area. So we can integrate the geospatial techniques as well as the ground-based survey for exploring any archaeological sites which are not visible through our eyes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, madam, for your presentation. Actually, we are running out of time, so I had to interfere. So I'll now, sir, we are taking questions at the last, sir.
Okay, just next speaker, please.
Okay, then I would request Dr. Bolai Chandra Das, Associate Professor in Department of Geography, Krishnanagar Government College, to deliver his presentation. Hello.
Yes, I'm trying.
Yes, sir.
Am I visible? Hello?
Yes. Your
Yes, sir.
presentation is visible.
Okay.
Yes, sir, you are visible, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Respected chairperson of this session, Professor Muhammad Shahidul Islam, Dhaka University. Coordinator, Dr. Somashish Sengupta, University of Burdwan, and all faculties, research scholars, and beloved students. It's my pleasure to have opportunity to share this presentation here, and I am thankful to the organizer for giving me this opportunity. Actually, there is nothing novelty in my presentation. I'm not here delivering a rigorous research paper based on latest development, debate, or whatever within the domain of fluvial geomorphology. This is not at all a contribution, or this will not enhance the, or will not contribute anything to the material or methods or techniques forefront of current knowledge of fluvial geomorphology. this presentation will not set any direction for future research also. Rather, in this presentation, I'm going to share some problems what I face during measuring channel parameters in the field. And certainly, this presentation will no way benefit faculty, scholars, or researchers, but it may raise some practical issues and challenges to the college students. So, how can I show my?
Sir, you can go to slideshow mode, or you can just click on the next slide on your table of content.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
What is here? Yeah. One thing, randomness is the essence of nature. It randomly happens, everything randomly happens. And it's common than orderliness. We try to find some orderliness in the nature, but when we study the things for which we are interested, we find it unique. But within randomness, there is some pattern, and we can say that all these things are randomly ordered or orderly random. However, and to study the randomness, uniqueness of the nature, we are always eager to frame some laws so that we can so that we can study the unique nature, applying the general laws. In studying rivers, some minor problems, minor issues appears with great difficulties, and it may be silly to someone in this.
Can you please put on your video, sir?
Hello.
Sir, please put on your video.
Put on
Your video, sir.
Actually, I have tried it, but
ঠিক আছে স্যার, দরকার নেই, আপনি বলুন স্যার, আমরা
oh yes, video is on now. Okay. Hello. Okay.
স্যার আপনি কন্টিনিউ করুন, অসুবিধা হচ্ছে না।
So suppose there is a very simple problem, but it appears with great difficulty to me and my students during field study. What is the length of a drainage basin? Horton in 1932 said that drainage basin length to be used is not necessarily the maximum length, but it is to be measured from a point on the watershed line opposite the head of the main stream. For a drainage basin with a side outlet, the length may be less than the width. This is from Horton. He said maximum, it's not necessary that maximum length of the basin will be considered as the basin length. And you see here, oh, so which one is the basin length? As if the main stream, trunk stream is flowing in this direction, then is this the If the mainstream is flowing this direction, then this red line is the basin length or this black line. If the basin is like this, then what would be the basin length? This or this or this red line. After say more than 20 years, Morisheva in 1958 is a problem in measuring basin length. A problem in measuring basin length arises when the basin has an elongation perpendicular to a line from the mouth to the opposite side. Basin length is difficult to determine also when the highest elevation of the divide are on the side. Hence, elongation ratios were not calculated for such basins. These lines are quoted from Morisheva. So here you see Morisheva gave up some basins to measure its length. Let's suppose this is a basin, this is the mouth, outlet, and mainstream, where the basin is elongated this way. This right angle to the direction of mouth mainstream. The basin is elongated to the right angle of the mainstream's outfall direction. Length is here defined as longest dimension from the mouth to opposite side, and width is measured from normal to the length. So here, what is width is actually the length of basin, or this is the length of basin, whether A or B. This confusion faced by Morisheva, and he gave up. She gave up. And if basin length is A, it will rarely show the impact of basin shape on other morphometric and hydrological characters of the basin. What actually the essence of basin shape? Day before yesterday, I was talking with Dr. Ajnarul Islam, convener of this seminar. What channel reads mean? Again, there is a crisis of objective definition. Channel should have some kind of homogeneity, but again question arises, how much the degree of that homogeneity and what variables are to be considered measuring homogeneity? Or is there any other simple measures like 5 with upstream and 5 with downstream length, or 10 with upstream or 10 with downstream length, whatever. We don't have any ready-made definition of this. Now, river channel cross profile. Again, here is some problem with this. River channel cross profile has its size and shape. Size is how much the magnitude of cross profile, different parameters of cross profile, and shape is how it looks like. Now, see, here is a cross profile of a basin. One thing. Slideshow. how to go back to slideshow. Well, now, oh, I'm facing problem. Hmm. Hmm. Here is a cross section of a channel, and this is the maximum depth of the channel, and this weighted perimeter of the channel, and average depth, obviously cross sectional area is divided by width of the channel, and size is also another parameter of size is hydraulic radius. This is cross sectional area divided by weighted perimeter. And last of all is channel width. Now, what is channel width? We already know from this bank to that bank. Now, problem arises. If we are concerned about hydraulics of the channel and weighted channel, then it's very easy. Then it's very easy from this bank to that bank. But again, if we are only concerned about the form of the channel, just suppose it's a dry channel. We are looking after the dry channel form. Then where would be the width? From here to here, or from this to this side, or from here to here? Now, case of alluvial channel, you see, here is a high bank, and here is slip of slope, and here is the levee, highest level of the levee. Now, is the width from here to here, or from here to here, or from this point to that? These are the question problem we face in field with my college students. And whenever we say that the width is from this bank to that bank, then what is bank? What is bed? There is no such objectively defined designed definition for field purpose. So this is, I'm presenting this for young geographer. So if they have any solution to share with us. Let's say here is a alluvial channel. Is the width this one or this one? I don't know. Again, another problem. With up to this or up to this or that. Now, if braided channel, again it makes complexity. This, that, total. Same problem in bedrock channel also. Whether from here, this is the width, or up to this level, or up to that level. Here is another term, bank footstage. It's very difficult and I didn't find any uniform or universally accepted definition of bank full stays. So here also the same problem remains.
Sir, you have 2 minutes left. Hello,
Yes.
sir.
Yes.
You have 2 minutes left, sir.
Okay, then some another thing is there. Size is over now. Shape and shape is well measured by Knighton in 1981, and there are two types of channel asymmetry. Shape can be measured by width depth ratio, asymmetry, and some other measures. I can't remember at present. So here shape asymmetry is well measured by Norton, and he showed two type of asymmetry, horizontal and vertical. But again, another problem arises if the one side of the here the basin is almost symmetrical except this bulging and pushing, but with the measure what we have, we are not able to detect this kind of defection. So it's over my presentation, and thank you everybody for your patience.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bolay Chandra Das. Thanks a lot. Sorry, I had to once again interfere. So now, speaker before us, next honorable speaker before us is Dr. Shubhendu Rai. So Dr. Shubhendu Rai is an assistant professor in the Department of Geography, Kalipada Ghosh Tarai Mahavidyalaya, Bagdogra, Darjeeling, India. So the topic on which he is going to present before us is geomorphological effect of the transportation infrastructure, a preview on the Indian context. So Shubhendu, you can join and you can start your presentation.
Actually, hello, thank you. Actually, Bolai sir have to stop the presentation.
Okay. So Shubhendu, you can join.
Yes, I am already joined actually.
Oh, sorry. How can I stop? Yes, Shubhendu, you start, please.
Yes, thank you. Respected chairperson and coordinator, and obviously the foundation of practicing geographer. As you can see in the screen, the title of my presentation is basically geomorphological effect of transportation infrastructure, a preview on the Indian context. Basically, this is a field of anthropogeomorphology. We all know about the geomorphology. We know about what is the anthropogeomorphology. We are dealing about it. But my question is, this is the famous book of anthropogeomorphology, especially by Andrew Goodis. And when we read this book, we can distinguish that the books have very well explained about the different drivers of anthropogeomorphology. But when we look about the impact of transportation network and transportation infrastructure, obviously they have mentioned in many places, but not intentionally like other drivers. That's why I am choose that field to insight on this aspect, how the transport infrastructures are interact with our geomorphological forms and processes. And this is my objective of this presentation, to insight in especially in context of India basically. And this is the simple example we all know about it when we make a trail on exercise over the field. This is simply the trails and or footpaths, and we can easily see the lot of erosional channels, reels and gullies over there, but we are not aware of it basically from our developing countries. But Western countries are very much aware on it and working presently, and they are very much work on it and they modeled on it, and obviously significantly they achieve their objectives to research on that perspective to maintain these resources and to control the erosion from this type of erosion and features, human affected features. And similarly, there is other lot of infrastructure we already know. There's roadways, railway lines, tunnels, obviously tunnels, and artificial airports and other airports also. Some culverts, bridges. There are a lot of adjoining auxiliary infrastructure related to transport infrastructure. All have a directly or indirectly interacting with the geomorphological processes as well as significant outcomes. So this, I just want to highlight some of this interaction with some slides. First of all, from Indian context, if we see the development of transport infrastructure in India, this is very significant because India is the second largest country in the world after USA in terms of its transport network in terms of total length of the network, and we can see the temporal development of every aspect of the every feature: highways, railways, rural roads, urban roads, and lot of significant other infrastructures, and especially the rural roads, which is very much interact with our directly geomorphology and other fields. And we can also see that how India investing a significant amount of its economy is GDP. Basically, since 2007, we can see the increasing rate of share of GDP. Recently, India sharing about 1% of its GDP on this, the development of transport infrastructure feature. So from the economics perspective also, this is a very important aspect to know about the interaction between our geomorphology, different geomorphological processes, and our transport network. Is very important for our economic development and others activities. And from Indian perspective, we also see that how the development takes place in terms of railway network and passenger goods carrier in all aspects. And India is also going to invest a significant amount by 2023 under the National Infrastructure Pipeline Project, about 1.4 trillion on this particular aspect, transport development. And we recently, if we know the news that our minister also announced the world longest expressway from Mumbai to Delhi, all comes under project. But all of these has significantly interact with our river systems and other geomorphological features. And from the perspective of Indian floods and transport infrastructure loss, basically with the help of the data, CWC, for the last 60 years of damage data and related flood affected data, here we can see that it is normalized data from 1960s. I have normalized based on some economic data with the help of wholesale price index to compare the changes of damage data. So we can see that though the flood affected area over the year is not increased significantly. Even if you compare the most affected flood years, decade 1980s and recent 2010s, we can see that it's negative 42%. And whereas if we see the public utility, basically the transport infrastructure damage comes under this head, public utility loss, and we can see that significant 220% increase. Even from this scatter plot, we can also understand the situation, how the flood affected area over the India last 60 years are not significant but decreasing. There is a decreasing rate. But if we see that increasing public utility loss, it is significantly high. As per the Mankandel test, we can see that it is significantly increased over the India. So from this estimation or calculation, we can conclude that the transport infrastructure, though the flood affected areas not increase over the India, but the transport infrastructure and other related infrastructure has lost significantly over the year, because we are so much interacting with the flood plains, because most of the transport infrastructural loss comes under the flood area. So we can conclude that the construction of transport related infrastructure are very much comes close to the river activities. This is for India scale. If we come in the local level also, this is a small study from a basin of Eastern India. In the last 5 decades, from 1970s to 2010, we can see that how transport infrastructure comes close to the river networks. And this is the proximity and this is the data. we can see that in the buffer based analysis, we can see that in 30 meter, 50 meter, 100 meter and 500 meters buffers, how the length of transport network are significantly increased within this buffering compared to 1970. So this is a important aspect what we already saw. This is the cause of why our transport infrastructure losses are increasing temporarily. And this is some example. Last year, we have lost a lot of transport infrastructure due to the flood affected areas. And from global perspective also, we can see that this is a very good research on nature communication. About 27% of global road and railway networks comes in at least one types of geohazard. So this helps to understand how transport infrastructure very much linked with the geohazard. And India comes on the top 10 country within this list, and the most of the impact comes from basically river flooding or surface flooding. And if we want to explain, want to know how that interaction or mode of interaction between transport network systems and our geomorphology, so first we have to concern about the movement of earthwork. We already know for any construction, especially for the transport network, to construct embanked and other features, we have to make lot of earthwork, or we have to cut field work and others. And as per the estimation by Hook in 1994, in USA only 3.8 billion tons of earth material have been excavated every year for this type of infrastructure, and which is significantly increase the sediment yield in our river system. As per the work by Ullman and in Georgia, we can see how significantly increase the sediment yield in our river system, or in our system, obviously sediment yield river system. This is a so crucial aspect. This is a very ongoing recent picture from the eastern India. We know that there is an ongoing railway project to connect Sikkim from the Darjeeling and rest of the India, and this is the undergoing project for tunneling. There is a 12 tunnel across this in this project, and the problem is that these tunnels basically is the primary activity of excavation, and the excavated material has been, the problem is where they are depositing. This is a very 1 week earlier photographs. They are depositing their excavated material within the bed of Tista. So this is a very crucial picture or crucial point why they are depositing such a huge amount of sediment within this river bed, and which is significantly, that will be significantly affect our Tista river system. This is a crucial, and there are a lot of tunneling projects ongoing in our India, we know, across the world also. So all of has significantly impact our geomorphology. And from the connectivity perspective, if we want to know the connectivity perspective, the geomorphological, we know about from the connectivity perspective, a river system has direct lateral connectivity with its floodplain as well as longitudinal connectivity across these channels. If we through this model, if we estimated that the red lines are basically showing the road and railway lines, how they can be disconnected our floodplain. As we already know that we are very much constructing or aligned our network over the floodplain area, and through this process we can detect how amount of our floodplain has been disconnected through the large embankment, because they have to construct their engineering work above the floodplain level. So that's why they are using lot of embankment height, increasing their embankment height, road embankment height, and which is significantly affect the flux of sediment and water from floodplain to river. This is a very crucial problem, as well as the culvert and bridges for longitudinal connectivity, that is to significantly affect the channel geomorphology directly. And this is the latest research over the Bengal actually. We have I have classified the Bengal in different river basins, and we estimated the existing floodplain and how much of that existing floodplain has been disconnected due to the roadway networks and other networks. We can see that in every river there is a significant disconnectivity. Over the Bengal, about 21% floodplain are disconnected, laterally disconnected due to this type of construction. And this is the basic features, how the proximity and other transport network varies across the basins over there. And we can see that from this estimation, about 40% area of the Bengal comes under the proximity of 1 kilometer roads, basically 1 kilometers of railway networks, river networks. This is a point of concern about during the construction of any railway construction. And from the floodplain flood affected map, we can overlay through the overlay analysis, we can see that about 30% road as well as road and railway network are vulnerable to flood for the Bengal. And this from a longitudinal perspective, there is some immediate effect and delayed effect on river system basically. And a research on this field also, I have shown significant impact on our river system, basically channel geomorphology, especially with depth and others, and also significantly change. And this platform index, and these changes not only comes also vary with the types of culvert or bridge constructed. We can see that the maximum problem comes from the pipe culvert, not from bridge culvert. Basically, pipe culvert are using more concentrated water towards downstream. That is significantly affect the flow dynamics below the downstream and increasing the velocity. That's why they are increasing the erosion and other changing features. And also they are changing the river dynamics. This is this flow model of this acres, and we can see how the transport materials flow, different aspects are changing from downstream to upstream. And the main problem of this particular culvert is undersized. As per the standard rate, as per the standard estimation, what I have been provided by Bridge Inspection Board as well as Indian Road Congress, based on that calculation, if we estimate or compare the existing feature, we can see that in every crossing structure they are undersized in compared to the river what should be there as per the channel dynamic characteristics of over there. So this is the main problem due to the why our channel is affected due to the culverts. And this is very common feature this year basically. We can see that over the lot of landslide impact our transport networks over the mountain area. And from world's perspective, we can see that if we make a proximity between our landslide, this is the landslide inventory map from the NASA, and road networks, major road networks over the world, and from this proximity analysis, we can see that about 40% landslide has been happened within the 500 meter of any major roads. This is a very crucial point why our how our road network interacting with the landslides and other geomorphic mass movement and activities. So this is a statistics on that. And
Dr. Shubhendu Rai, you are 2 minutes.
Okay,
you have 2 minutes. Please try.
Okay, I have two slides only. Okay. And another aspect, which is also how we know that the transport network significantly control our surface network, surface drainage also, or surface flow, because they are affecting as a embankment, as a corridor, and they also increase the as a impervious road, as they also increase significant amount of water from the road pavement, and which is significant affect our their concentrated flow of this concentrated flow from this transport network. They are increasing the chances of gully area, and similar example comes from our recent in North Bengal also. We can see as a below the crossing structure, a large significant area of gully has been formed within the T-belt area. There is a other small scale of gully over there, and in other perspective, the abundant airports also impact our flow characteristics and increasing the formation of gully. There are a lot of abundant airports which are significantly affect our geomorphological features, and this is a different scale of interaction between airport construction and our geomorphological features. And the abundant airport is there are a lot of airport over the India specifically and the world also. This is the map of the existing location of airports, and this is an example of how a single airport can change significantly our next river network. This is the Kazi Nazrul Airport construction Andal region, and we can see how temporarily affected the existing transport network river system, and they have channelized a river. Totally has been channelized a river for the construction of this airport, and this is also directly interact with our existing geomorphology. So in conclusion, we can see that through a wide range of transport infrastructure, the multidimensional hydrogeomorphological effect we are observing in India as well as other country also. And the most important effect directly interacted is surface hydrology. River networks significantly interact with the surface hydrology and increasing the reducing the infiltration and other increasing the velocity or reducing the threshold for so gully formation and others, and also significantly increase the sediment input to the rivers through the earthwork and other works. And in plain region, lateral and longitudinal connectivity is very much observed for our river system. So to eradicate this problem, we have to go through some standard method for construction of this type of like bioengineering, deculverization, and 100 years floodplain for any type of causeway construction and mapping of river corridor and road water harvesting. This is the recent green road concept comes for this type of management overall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shubhendu Rai, for your nice presentation. So I would directly welcome the next speaker, Dr. Shunipa Mondol, Department of Geological Sciences, Jadavpur University, Kolkata, West Bengal. So the topic on which she is going to present her paper is fluvial changing pattern in response to tectonic sway at Darjeeling Himalayan foothills. So madam, you can directly go on to the presentation.
Sure.
Hello.
I would like to share my screen.
Okay, madam. Dr. Shubhendu Rai,
Yes.
you can stop sharing.
I have done.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am, you can start.
Okay. Visible?
It's coming, ma'am. We are good.
Visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay.
You can start, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, respected chairman, honorable guests, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm going to discuss the fluvial changing pattern in response to tectonic sway at Darjeeling Himalayan foothills. The study area is demarcated by yellow dotted line, which is encompassing digitalized version of the River Chel Valley topography recorded the neotectonic imprint situated at the eastern part of the Himalayan belt in North Bengal, India. The entire Chel basin has been treated in two different segments. First sector mainly encompasses within hilly terrain, and second segment includes in the Piedmont is the alluvial fan system. Here it clearly elicits the first order regional topographic divide in the study area, which is the MFT ridge crest, separating the rugged hilly terrain from the much smoothened Piedmont. Actually, the river Chel is a rain-fed river, has been generated through the combination of two rivers, namely Sel and Kali. Kola. They have conjugated above the MFT and named as Chel in the hilly terrain. Here, the first segment area is characterized by semicircular catchment with enclosing a butte at the center. The butte is clearly a tectonic high separating the two rivers Kali and Sel from each other. Tectonic high is related butte is well manifested in the background of the seismotectonic map produced by GSI 2000. The butte appears to be related to the main central thrust designated as MCT. The same contention has been further corroborated by the presence of rampant flat structure and myelinization. This phenomena is further supported by the drainage pattern along the flank of the semicircular catchment area is converging, but contrastingly, it is diverging or radiating on the butte enclosed by it. So, here the slope factor is well manifested in the relatively steeper gradient through the radiating drainage pattern on dome-shaped butte. So the tectonic overprint is apparent. In the hilly terrain, here the river is almost straight, being confined within a deep canyon incised through hard rocks, allowing only short meander loops. Significantly, the river Chel, like most other rivers in the area, runs parallel to a tectonic lineament recognized by GSI. To elicit the neotectonic imprint, some of the attributes are chosen herein. Uh, Here, topographic profile of the transverse sections of different transect of valleys along the river Chail have been
মিউটকে বলছে
delineated.
বুট, আমি খালি ভাবছি এই যদি তোর সত্যি শেষ ইয়ে করতে। হ্যালো,
They have obtained from SRTM DAME, which has been accomplished by using GIS softwares. Valley width and incision depths are about 83 meter and 85 meter respectively. These parameters clearly reflect significant lowering of base profile. Here, the eastern flank of the valley is always steeper than the western flank, and the maximum steepness recorded is near about 45.68 degree. So here the terrain in the eastern side of the river Chail river course has apparently been uplifted with respect to the terrain on the west. The steepness at the southern flank of the MFT has been deciphered by the dominance of dendritic drainage pattern at places and parallel or semi-parallel elsewhere, and its preferential orientation clearly depicts the neotectonic effect. And the significant difference in stream order across the MFT ridge uh, has been noted here, and a clear dominance of first order streams on the southern flank, then on the northern flank also attests that the higher gradients at the southern flank on the MFT. So the primary character of the southerly verging MFT is well reflected again, and experimental results of VF in the river Chel course is mostly between 0.23 to 0.25, never exceeding 0.5. So these aspects suggest that the base profile fall is a tectonic effect. Now, the overall basin elongation ratio, which is designated as RE in the Chail watershed basin in the hilly terrain, is 0.35, not exceeding the value of tectonic unrest, that is 0.5. And now the next parameter, that is the high hypsometric indices greater than 0.5 obtained from the entire river valley studied herein, strongly suggest the youthfulness of the regional topography. And interestingly, the common tendency of the hypsometric curve for being convex upward further corroborates the same fact. And the upliftment of MFT has been further constructed by the documentation of HL plot or the Hax profile. And the concavo-convex geometry of the Hax profile manifests significant spatial changes in pattern of disequilibrium with respect to the graded profile, and it reflects also the tectonic unrest. And further, the overall stream gradient in the present study area has been measured. The measurement was conducted in successive straight channel segments from the adjacent to MFT, upstream and downstream. And it has been noted that the gradient is found to attain the minimum value around the MFT. So it denotes the upliftment of MFT, and it negates all the erosional activities of the river. Now, the upliftment of the MFT has been further supported by the progressively shortening of the fan components within the fan system. Here, 5 different morphogenetic units have been recognized by using subsequent improved quality of satellite imageries and corresponding ground checking. The fan system is numbered 1 to 5 in their successive generations, as the youngest most is designated as 1, and then followed by 2, 3, 4, and 5. And it's very interesting that fat components have tended to migrate upslope through their successive generations. So it may be occurred due to either the climate turned arid or the source was uplifted. And the different generations, I have mentioned that they have different generations of fan systems. So the different generations of fan system have been demarcated by reddish brown colors, which indicates that the entire fan was abundant or regional diasteme. The diasteme has been recorded between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 fan contact. So they are genetically different. And it has been further corroborated by significant distinct changes in axial orientation of the fans through their genetic sequence clearly depicts neotectonic effect. Similarly, here the overall tilt of the fans through their genetic sequence have been increased, and the degree of convexity of fans here have been estimated for the different fan components, and it increases through their successive generations, and it suggests that the shortening of the fans was because of coarsening of sediments constituting the fans, and this aspect is further subjected by plotting of the maximum class size of mass flow product through their successive generations clearly depict that the coarsening of sediments in the fan system through time. So this increment in class size and successive depositional phases records progressive uplift of the source. And here, altogether, 14 phases have been recognized, some significant mass flow, and among them few are sediment gravity flow also written here. And some of the examples from sediment gravity flow delivered here. Significantly, the source upliftment has been further documented by histogram plotting against the percentage of cluster composition versus number of fans. And interestingly, the youngest most fan is mostly occupied by the cluster of older formation rocks. The distant igneous parent rock comes close to the depositional site reflects the neotectonic thrust verging towards the south. So all these aspects together makes it apparent that tectonic uplift of source rather than climate turning arid had been the cause of shortening and shifting of fan system upstream. Secondly, all the fans are virtually dormant now because the fan system has been incised deeply by the presently active river channel. It may be occurred due to either the water discharge increase with climate turning humid or the basement was uplifted. From the Booger anomaly data, it has been revealed that the alluvial fan system sitting on the basement trough and at least 2.84 metric ton thick pile of sediment accumulated in this nested valley. And the deep incisions have been measured through valley floor width to height ratio designated as VF in the present day channel, and VF is mostly between 0.1 to 0.42, and less than 0.5 value of VF is apparently subject to drop in base profile inducing deep incision through the fan system is a tectonic effect. And interestingly here the valley walls at many places are stepped in form of terraces, and interestingly these 4 to 5 terraces are unpaired. And this is the example from the unpaired terrace given here. And the present Piedmont channel incides through the entire fan systems. The VF in this active channel, in conjunction with existence of unpaired terraces of different generations, point to fact that the river channel has been affected by neotectonism is the recent time as well, and the tectonic effect is more pronounced. And it is very interesting, besides the clear shift of the entire river system in the area westward, documented by superimposing the satellite image of the year 2007 on the georeference toposheet of 1962, speaks eloquently about the influence of neotectonism. And it also has been noted that the pristine 1962 Shell-Khola channel was entirely shifted to the new course of 2007 far westward, indicating uplift of the area which was originally cut by the river chain. And here the migration of flank has been more pronounced in the river Chale on Piedmont, which is reaffirmed that the river appears to have shifted persistently westward over the years. All these facts suggest that the terrain in the eastern side of the river Chale has been uplifted with respect to the terrain on the west, I have already mentioned. And from this point of view, it may be assumed that the raising of the eastern flank may be caused due to additional push from the Arakan plate on the east. And it has been shown that the migration of flank rivers toward the river Tista somehow ceased by 1962. Afterwards, no evidence for shifting of flank rivers till now, but this equilibrium in such tectonic active zone is very, very delicate. And it's very interesting from this profile section, the downcutting of river Tista must have tilted the water table towards itself. Consequently, flank rivers Mohananda and Cheld moved towards it. And the drop in base profile from this profile section, the drop in base profile due to discharge amount have been increased enormously. So it has been noted that the primarily plains-fed river Tista with glacier-fed mountain drainage system, as suggested by Chakraborty and Ghosh 2010 during 1787 major flood and accompanied by major earthquake. So hence destruction of these fan systems was induced by increase in discharge in river Tista and river Chale. Nevertheless, the ultimate cause had been tectonism instead of climate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your nice and enriching presentation. So, and I'd now welcome the next speaker, Dr. Priyank Praveen Patel, Department of Geography, Presidency University, to deliver your presentation.
I need to share the screen.
Yes, the topic on which Dr. Patel is going to speak before us is advances in fluvial ecogeomorphology, conceptual models and assessment frameworks.
So I assume this can be seen?
It can be seen, sir.
Right?
You can start.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I'll talk very briefly today on advances in fluvial ecogeomorphology. What are the conceptual models that have come about today? And whatever I'm going to show you, these are part of what we teach as part of our syllabus in my college. And I would hope that these things become more and more part of the curricula as we go ahead. So just to highlight that we have seen a lot of presentations on traditional morphometric parameters, and those are still very relevant. But there are new things that have come into fluvial geomorphology. So starting from Houghton's ideas and carrying on with the other concepts of Schum and Langben and Leopold et al., what we now have is we consider the entire river system as a very complex entity. And as part of it, we look at things like flood pulse concept, ecological significance of rivers. And if you see from 1990 onwards, these things have become more and more important. And if we have a brief look at the literature during this period, we see that new terms like continuum, corridor, riverscape, network, these are becoming more and more relevant in the literature. We did a brief literature review of this in a paper, and we saw that over the last 10 years, the word river restoration, that has become more and more important. Another word in river research that has become increasingly relevant is connectivity. And by connectivity, we talk about three types of connectivity: longitudinal connectivity, that is upstream to downstream; lateral connectivity, that is the linkage of the river with its floodplain; and we talk about the vertical connectivity, that is the river bed and the hyporheic zone and the groundwater linkages that are there. And this is something that we see across different rivers, where in the mountain stretch, we have greater longitudinal connectivity because of the constrained channel and narrow floodplain. In the braided section, sometimes in the alluvial fan zone, we have greater lateral connectivity because the river braids a lot, moves, is more dynamic on its sides. And whereas in the lower floodplain portions, we have both lateral and longitudinal connectivity with some component of vertical connectivity. So I'll just try to show you how to examine these aspects, what are the frameworks that are there in place today. And why has this become relevant? Because we function as a science, but we cannot grow as a science unless we feed into the policies. And government policies are today taking more and more cognizance of the environmental scenarios. There are a lot of sustainable development goals focusing that have rivers, that focus on rivers or have river components inside them. And so over time, over the last 200 years, we have had increasing focus on using rivers as a matter of policy. In India, we have not had this so far, but over the last 2 decades, increasingly the Central Water Commission, the Namami Gange projects which have come up, they're looking at things like river restoration, not just river beautification, but also river restoration. And by that, I mean not just cleaning up the water quality, but also looking at the entire riverscape. And so things that we ask ourselves is, what makes a river ecosystem more resilient? What are the factors that it is sensitive to? How do we measure such resilience? How can we increase such resilience of river systems so that it can deal with huge population pressure, resource extractions? And one concept that has come up is escape de liberté, that is the erodible corridor, that you allow a river certain space where it can do its function. There is a very good paper which talks about the importance of allowing rivers to do erosion or the work of a river. And so these kind of white papers, these kind of policy papers are now in the literature domain. So going ahead, how does this relate with what we are presently doing? Now, we are very aware of hydrographs, discharge hydrographs, and we have measured this, drawn this. We are also even more aware of how the hydrograph is altered by, say, a process like urbanization, where urbanization increases the peak of the flow, or it reduces the lag time because we have greater impervious surfaces and there is more runoff into the river as a result. But from 2007 and then in 2018, there were 2 conferences in Brisbane, and they came up with what is known as the Brisbane Declaration, which talks about environmental flows, that how much water should be there in a river in order that there is a minimum support for the aquatic life or the aquatic habitats that are there inside. And therefore, today we now look at hydrographs in a different way, because we see that while the curve of the hydrograph is still low, then there is no movement of seeds or there is no movement of fishes. There is disconnectivity in the river. As the limb of the hydrograph rises, the differentiated pools in the river, they are linked by the flowing water, and the pools that were earlier separate, now there is continuous flowing of water through them, and that allows fish migration, that allows dispersal of seeds, that allows spawning to take place, right? So we now look at the hydrograph, the rising and the falling limb of the hydrograph, and how it relates with the seed and fish dispersal, how it deals with habitat diversity and patch dynamics in the riparian landscape. So along with this, now we have new ways of computing the environmental flow. There are various methods. One of the easy methods is to see the mean annual flow, the percentage of mean annual flow that is occurring. And on the basis of that, we can characterize river reaches as degraded, good, excellent, flushing. Flushing means very high mean annual flow or very high percentage of mean annual flow, which is allowing the sediment to be flushed out, dredging out the river system, and thereby it is destroying some habitats, it is creating new habitats and new spaces. So these kind of analysis has today become the norm. Along with this, we are having other kinds of analysis where we see hyporheic exchanges with the river water, where what are the exchanges of nutrients, what are the exchanges of dissolved organic carbon, exchanges of say water levels between the groundwater and the surface water, effluent and influent streams. So traditionally, these are not part of geomorphic research. But what I want to lay in front of all of you today is that these should become part of our research, because these help us to analyze and understand the river ecosystem in a much better way. And one of the most important components of this is the vegetation and the river system interaction, right? The vegetation and the river system interaction that is there. And through that, we talk about river hydromorphodynamics. That is, how does vegetation influence river flow? How does river flow in turn influence vegetation? How does the presence of vegetation affect river banks? See, it's very easy to say, oh, if there is vegetation along the river banks, maybe the banks are protected. But can we measure it? Can we model it? Can we create a framework through which this can be analyzed and then put as part of scientific studies and then utilized as part of government policies? Right? So that is where river science should transition, rather than being just a classroom-based exercise. Right? So if you just look at river and river and vegetation interactions, so what are the physical processes that we see in a river and that is linked with the vegetation? Flow duration. Okay, this helps to characterize the nature of the vegetation that grows along the river. The kind of sediment that is there in the river, that characterizes the nature of vegetation as well. Then when we look at the vegetation itself, we talk about different things, the above ground vegetation and the below water vegetation. So we can characterize vegetation as different types. Plants that are always submerged, plants that are emergent at low flows when the river flow drops down to its lowest level, those plants that are emergent, and then plants that are always emergent above the flow. So how do these kind of plants interact with the water? There are different models that have come up in place, and I'll show you some equations. I don't have time to show you all the different models that are there in play today, but these are the parameters that we look at. What is the above ground biomass? What is the below ground biomass? What is the density of the roots? What is the lateral and vertical spread of the roots? What is the cohesion induced in the soil as a result of these roots? Right? So we are looking directly at river processes and vegetation interactions. So the other thing that we look at is how does the flow regime control the vegetation pattern distribution? How does the lateral flooding every year control the vegetation pattern distribution? If there is vegetation growth in the channel, at what flow can the vegetation remain upright? At what flow will it tilt and fall downwards, okay, or tilt downwards? So in this scenario, we see that grasses are a good option because grasses can bend downwards and then again bounce back, whereas trees that have tap roots, they actually get more eroded by the flow, or they can topple over, and then we lose that kind of vegetation cover or protection along the bank. Right? So some of the equations that have come in place, some of the very common equations, Manning's equation, this is something that we have always used. But today we have a Manning's roughness equation based just for vegetation density, where we can use the vegetation density along the river to calculate, to recalibrate the Manning's equation that we are doing. Then what I was showing you, what is the vegetation height that will be there after the flexion. So the grass is there, it has bent down. Once it comes back up, then what will be the height of the grass? Because that will have implications for, the surface water velocity profile. So see, this is a list of equations that talk about if the vegetation is submerged, then the water layers that are above the submerged vegetation, how will the disturbance of the submerged vegetation affect the vertical profile of the velocity? And what you can see is that these equations started to be devised around 1960s. They're carrying on till today. And as we are getting more and more data, analyzing more streams, different species, different climatic areas, we are able to develop more and more precise equations in this regard. So if we have to use these equations in our area, they must be focused and calibrated according to our values. That is something which is very, very important. Then again, interactions of vegetation cover along the banks with the vegetation width that is there. And what a lot of studies in England have shown that if there is no vegetation, right? If there is no vegetation, then the bank width is 4.33 times the square root of the discharge. But if there is dense shrubs, so the bank width becomes 2.3 times the square root of the the bank full discharge. So there is a decrease of magnitude of 2, right? We are reducing this multiplication quotient by 2. So that immediately shows that greater vegetation cover retards the flow, that reduces the discharge. And then if you link this with your concepts of the Hulstrom curve, so a lesser flow will allow lesser particles to become entrained, and that then ends up protecting the river bank, right? And of course, this varies according to the bioclimatic context that we are in. For example, in a tropical area, because there is so much of vegetation, a major flood does not increase the river width that much. But if you see in a semi-arid area, a major flood or say a flash flood that really enhances the river width a lot, because there is no protective vegetation along the banks. And then the river takes a long time to come back to the equilibrium phase. And even then there is a lot of hysteresis that results because it doesn't really come back to the original position from where it had started out, right? So these are things now that are being measured, where case studies are coming up. And I think these are very good projects that can be taken up. Another very good area of my own interest and research that has come up is large woody debris, or LWDs as they are known. So these are basically tree limbs that fall in the river. And here we are basically looking at mountain rivers and Piedmont zone rivers, not so much floodplain rivers, but even then we do get LWDs there. And why is this important? See, we can characterize the LWD. If there are branches, if there are branches, coming out from the main trunk, we call these sticky. Why? Because this allows the fine organic matter or the fine leaf litter in the river to get stuck onto these branches, right? What is the angle at which the LWD is against the bank? That becomes important because that provides some protection zones or low flow zones for the water. So based on the arrangement of LWDs, we now have very good hydrodynamic models that can show the retardation of the flow velocity downstream of a branch. So if we have a very high resolution DEM, or if we create a very high resolution DEM using field surveys like structure from motion or digital photogrammetry, then we can create such branch 3D models. And then we can actually show the drop in the velocity in the lee of the branch compared to what it was in the fore of the branch. And how does this become important? Because if there is a branch cover, if there is a LWD dam, so the main river or the main flow of the river goes around it, but the flow of the river that is obstructed by the LWD dam, that results in the deposition of finer sediments. Now these finer sediment banks, they become the places where you have fine, say, tadpoles growing, small fishes that find a habitat. And so an entirely new environment or aquatic habitat comes up. And so therefore, what I want to impress upon all of you is when we teach or study riffles or pools, we should not just look at them as morphological parameters, but also as habitat parameters, because riffles are areas of oxygenation. They have diverse substrate, and so they offer habitat to different kinds of species. In a similar way, pools are areas of slow moving water. So these are refuge areas for fish that can dive down into the deeper waters, right? And so what we now have is a concept called physical biotopes, where we take the physical environment and we segment it out into the biological aquatic zones that are possible from the physical environment. So this is a new emergence of where we have ecology coming in with fluvial geomorphology. And so we now call it fluvial ecogeomorphology, which becomes very important to understand the entire riverine ecosystem dynamics. Right? And this LWD causes a lot of impact on the river system as well. We had one presentation on bridges and how it affects rivers. So LWD causes a lot of impacts on this. Why? Because the piling up of LWDs below bridges has historically destroyed bridges because of the weight that is there, or the presence of LWDs has increased the aquatic habitats that are there in a stream, right? The other thing that we look at is the vegetation succession. So the very common question is, নদীর পাড়ে কেমন গাছপালা, নদীর দূরে গিয়ে কত গাছপালা? So what is the kind of vegetation along the bank? And if we go further and further away from the bank, how does the vegetation tire? Hello? So how does vegetation change along the bank profile from the river channel right up to the upper limits of the floodplain, right? So this is vegetation succession. And usually what we see in low water areas, we have herbaceous plants. Along the channel, we have shrubs. The further we go into the floodplain, into the terrace, we have upstanding trees, right? So this also has been broken down into different zones. So 5 zones has been devised by Angela Gurnell and others, where they talk about the permanently inundated zone, the frequently inundated zone, that is the area most affected by floods and flash floods, and then the faraway zone, zone 5, where there is much less inundation and the area that depends more on soil moisture from rainfall. And on the basis of this, they have very nicely done riparian zonation along rivers, whether it is a confined channel, whether it is an unconfined channel, whether it is a floodplain channel. So different widths of zones will vary across the river from its upper to the middle course. And the width of these individual zones will also vary, whether it is a meandering channel, whether it is a braided channel, so on. Because each of these rivers have a different dynamic, the lateral spread of their waters will vary according to their climatic condition and their river morphological form. So you're able to relate very nicely the kind of discharge in the river, the kind of sediment movement in the river, its lateral spread across the floodplain, and the vegetation succession and dynamics that is taking place over there. Right? And in Europe, they did a study where they measured the soil moisture from the river bed right up to the upper limits of the floodplain, and different kinds of vegetation were found to exist in different kinds of soil moisture zones. So we do get a very, very nice zonation or gradient along this. And so from this, there is a new model that has come up, which is called the 4 biogeomorphic phases model, where suppose there is a big flood along a river, which causes removal of vegetation. So that is when the abiotic processes are the most dynamic. Then there is a new sandbank that is created. Just imagine there's a flood that happens, then the flow drops, there is deposition of fine sediments, a new sandbank is created. So then we have a pioneer vegetation. So we have some imprint of the biotic processes. Over time, the biogeomorphic and the abiotic, they balance each other. And then again, in the end, it is the abiotic or the plants that take over the entire riparian zone, whereas once the water flow velocities have gone down or the discharge has gone down. So we can see this very nice transition from abiotic to the biotic. And when we look at frequently flooded areas, and depending on how much abiotic imprint is there or how much biotic imprint is there, we can actually make an estimation when was the last big flood. All right, so these are things that are done. Again, Kluwer and Thorn, this is their 2013 paper. They have actually talked about incorporating biological elements or plants and animals into river classification norms. So usually the river classification that we have done, that has depended on just river morphology, discharge, sediment. They talk about the impact of biogenic processes or biological processes, and they have devised a very nice triangle, just like we have a textural triangle for soil classification, a triangle that they have devised which looks at the discharge components, the substrate and geological components, and the biological components. And so they have redevised the lane equation. So if you remember the lane equation, discharge into channel slope must balance sediment amount into sediment size to bring about a potential equilibrium condition. And so they have devised that what is the impact of then biological species on the lanes equation? Okay, how does it impact on the balance that is over there? And this becomes more and more important because we are now going from what we know as biomes into what are called anthromes, because there are very few natural biomes that are there in the world. Today, we have anthropogenic biomes or what are called anthromes. And so as we are transitioning into those areas, I think incorporating biological elements into river channel process analysis becomes more and more important. So this was a paper that came out which saw how Atlantic salmon, when they are digging the riverbed and laying their eggs, they are creating small holes in the riverbed. They are moving away the coarser sediment, and that allows the river to erode more. And over time, the laying of fish eggs along the river actually changes the river longitudinal profile. So you know how even fish can impact on what we assume to be a purely geomorphological process. And there are other papers that have come out like this: ants as geomorphological agents, cows as geomorphic agents. And again, incorporating or analyzing ecosystem services that are available from high resolution satellite images. So these kind of documents have come out, you can pursue them. So coming to the last part of what I want to present is, I'll take, I think, 5 or 6 more minutes, where we talk about the different frameworks for analysis that have come about. So historically, the most important one has been the river continuum concept by Venot, 1980, which basically talks about the movement of organic matter. Okay, CPOM is coarse particulate organic matter or dissolved organic matter. How does organic matter move through the river system? Why? Because this is the food web. The organic matter, as it moves through the river course, that supplies the food web to the different kinds of microbes or different kinds of shredders, predators that are over there. Right? So some are collectors. Collectors will just scoop up the sediment. Grazers will feed on top of the sediment. Gougers will dig down into the sediment, right? So again, I realize this is not strictly in the geomorphic domain or geologic domain. So when I do this work, or I plan to do this work, we take help of ecologists. But that is where our work becomes interdisciplinary. It becomes more acceptable to the other sciences. Right? So we can characterize these kind of organisms, and then you can see how they vary along the river. And there's a very good work that has been done, which shows how the nature of these organisms varies according to the stream order. So we can link Hottonian stream order with this and the river width. So we have the physical variables of the river in terms of stream order and river width. And then we have the chemical elements, organic elements in terms of the dissolved particles. And then we have the biological elements in terms of the organisms that are over there. So the entire ecosystem can be shown very nicely, right? So these are things that have come up. Of course, this varies for different environments. In the Arctic area, the RCC concept will vary. In boreal streams and deciduous streams, the distribution of organic matter, the kind of fish that are there, the nature of the river morphology, that will vary. So this again gives us a lot of scope to do this in our areas and then make an overall overarching generalization for, say, maybe a tropical region, for maybe southern Bengal, northern Bengal, these kind of areas. The other concept following the RCC that came up was a nutrient spiraling concept. Basically, how long does a particular nutrient remain in the water flow? Who takes it up? Who lets it go? Because our bodies, cycle nutrients. We don't retain nutrients, we cycle nutrients. So what is the nature of duration of residence of a nutrient, whether it is phosphorus or nitrogen in the water? And how is that done by the different kinds of communities, aquatic communities that are there? So this is the nutrient spiraling concept. And this really has a lot of impact on the river chemistry. Why? Because I'm sure you've heard of the Rio Negro, right? The black colored river that meets the Amazon. This becomes black because of the intense tannin acid that is leached out from the plants in the rainforests of the Amazon. So this dissolved organic matter, tracking it, how it impacts on the aquatic species over there, that becomes quite important. Now,
sir, hello, Priyank sir.
Yes.
I mean, you have 2 minutes left actually.
2 minutes, fine.
Okay.
So this becomes important. So large rivers are a little different because they spread sideways, they cause large floods. And so what we have is the ATTZ, Aquatic Terrestrial Transition Zone, how the floodwater goes up, how the floodwater goes down, and how that impacts on the standing vegetation in a particular place. There's another concept called the serial discontinuity, which talks about road disturbances and dam disturbances along the river, how that disconnects different sections and affects the ecosystem, right? So clubbing all these together, today we have something called the riverine ecosystem synthesis. Even going on ahead from that, we have what are called functional process zones in rivers, where we break the river up into small grids and we look at the ecosystem aspects, the morphological aspects, and the hydrological aspects, right? So this is the river wave. One good example of this is the river pyramid, okay, the stream pyramid framework concept, where each of these are embedded and the one feeds into the other. So we just did a small example of this. I'll just show you in a minute that we took a small river in Western Bengal, and we took the hydrology, geomorphic character, riparian ecology, and the water quality. And we measured all this using the bank erosion hazard index. We did this in RiverMorph software. And then we got the bank erosion that is taking place. Then we did the vegetation indexes using the QBR method and the riparian strip zonation method. And then we did the water quality. And once we also did the flood zones, which areas are being flooded the most. This was in Hekras. So the areas that are flooded are getting sand flows into them. So the riparian vegetation are being affected. And once you club all this together, you can then together show the ecological quality of every reach that is there along the river, right? And you can plot this along the long profile of the river, how this is varying. Along the long profile, we took 50 stations and how each of these parameters are varying across the 50 stations. Then using vegetation to protect river banks. So we were looking at vetiver grass. So measuring the root properties of the vetiver grass, how that can feed into numerical models to simulate bank erosion. And then this is a study that we did where we saw one-year-old vetiver grass protecting the riverbank in a certain place. And then when we did the hydrodynamic modeling of this, we saw that the velocity along the river channel was reducing because of the presence of the vetiver grass, right? And then we also related the cost dynamics. So if we take an earthen embankment and then we take the vetiver grass or vegetation-based assessment, it is 1/10 of the cost, we are getting the same impact. And also we talked with the local BDO, so we can feed this into the policy schemes. And this is where our science should actually go, so that we can actually inform government policies in a proper manner, right? So just ending this, just a minute, yeah. So these are some of the publications related to it, if you are interested in some of the works that I have shown. And thank you for your attention, right?
Thank you, Dr. Priyank Patel. So, for your enriching presentation. So, I would now like to request Dr. Shayantan Das, because as far as I know, in the schedule sent to us, Dr. Shananda Kundu, who was supposed to be the next speaker, is not available today. So, Dr. Shayantan Das you are requested to start your presentation. Shayantan Das.
Am I audible?
Hi, you are audible.
Okay.
Shayantan Das is working as an assistant professor in geography in Domdom Motijil College, West Bengal. So, yes,
a moment.
Shayantan, you can share your screen.
Yeah, I'm just doing it. So my topic is basically about the Ganga Brahmaputra Delta and its river systems. As you all know that this is the biggest delta in the world in terms of sediment discharge as well as water discharge. So just a moment, I'm just sharing the screen. So I'm just requesting the administrator to allow the other, because the screen is popping up in front of me. Please allow the participants to admit.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it is visible.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay.
Yes,
So
sir,
I'm
yes,
talking about the evolution of river systems in the biggest delta in the world, that is the Ganga Brahmaputra Delta. And as we all know, not only the biggest delta in terms of the water discharge as well as for the sediment discharge also, and there are numerous tributaries and especially the distributaries, which are mostly tide dominated, especially in the lower part of the delta, we can see. And this is the setup of the delta, where you can see the Ganga River, which is flowing from the northwestern side towards southeast, and the Brahmaputra coming down into this place, Bangladesh. And these two merges here, and it flows as a combined stream towards Bay of Bengal. And then we have the deltas, like I have divided the delta into two parts. Here, the Ganga Delta is on the southwestern side and the Brahmaputra Delta is on the northeastern side. And combining the two areas, we have the Ganga Brahmaputra Delta. Now, how this delta has developed? Now, this delta has started to develop especially during the Pliocene-Pleistocene period, when the opening of this Rajmahal and Meghalaya plateau has occurred. And especially this area, Chotanagpur Plateau, it becomes very important when I'm talking about this. So this Rajmahal and Garo gap, this is very important. And because of opening of this gap during the Pliocene-Pleistocene period, these two rivers are started to deposit their sediments into this particular area, which is originally an area dominated by the continental shelf and slope region. Okay, and so this is basically the northward drifting on the Indian Craton, which is obviously related with the development of the delta. So this started in the late Cretaceous period, and this is the present situation now. At the north, you can see at the topmost of the panel, you can see this is the present situation where you have the delta here. So earlier there was no delta. So the delta is a new thing which is only developed during this Pleistocene and especially the Holocene period. And it is presently where we are residing now. So this is basically dominated by the Holocene sediment. Okay. Now, this is the late Quaternary development of the Ganga Brahmaputra Delta. And if you closely look at these arrows, these are basically the principal flow direction in different time frames. Okay, and if you follow this flow direction here on the second panel, on B panel, here it is showing the flow directions of this Brahmaputra river. And this Brahmaputra, I will show it this later on, that Brahmaputra has changed its course during the Holocene period 6 times in Bangladesh itself. So I will show that in the later part of my presentation. So these accretionary lobes are basically showing the late Holocene growth, phase-wise late Holocene growth of the delta region. And the GBD, or the Ganga Brahmaputra Delta, has acquired its present form by throwing these successive accretionary lobes towards east and south, following the last Holocene transgression. Here, you can see the annotations starting with G. These are basically the delta lobes which are associated with the Ganga discharge, and the B, B1 and B2, these lobes are associated with the Brahmaputra discharge. Okay, so this is the elevation classes, elevation region, the different elevation regions, what we found in this delta region, Ganga Delta plain. You can see here. I think most of you have already, most of you were already there in the morning time lecture given by Dr. Rudra, and he talked about this Barin Tract and Madhupur Terrace. Both are Pleistocene terraces, and these terrace, Madhupur Terrace, I'll come to that later on. This is very important as it compartmentalizes the Brahmaputra discharge into two parts. So talking about the western part of the delta, and especially the Ganga Delta. So this is the apex region of the delta, where we have the arrangement of past and present river courses here. Now, this is Malda on the northern side, northern and eastern side of the map, or on the river channel. We have Malda and Gaur, and near this particular area, near the present river course, we have numerous black dashed lines. These are basically the meander scrolls, which are indicating the paleo courses, previous courses of the Ganga River. Okay, and as you can see, there are numerous channels, and these are basically indicating the shifting of course of Ganga towards south. And Gaur was the most important settlement of this region between 6th century and 13th century. And after the Ganga has shifted towards south, the importance of Gaur has decreased significantly. Now, this is the two-tier jetty system, what we found in Gaur. It is still there, and it is about 25 kilometers north of the present channel, and it is basically indicating the course of Ganga through Gaur during the historical times. Now, this is the oscillating Ganga course through the West Bengal, and there are places what we have in Murshidabad district, and you can see in different periods the Ganga course is oscillating significantly. And here a few examples I have cited of the oscillating Ganga course. This is the place called Nirmal Chor, and you can see in every mapping year the shape of the chor has changed significantly. Now, these are some of the these are some of the photographs of the Ganga River or Padma River, you can say. And these features are not, these are not permanent. These photographs are basically taken 8 to 10 years ago, and I'm sure the situation has changed significantly here right now. And this particular area, this is basically the border between India and Bangladesh. Now, the river Ganga or the river Padma, it used to flow over this region about 150 years ago. Okay, now here these square boxes are basically indicating the offtakes of the rivers. Different rivers and paleo channels are shown here. Now I'm talking about the offtakes. The Ganga offtake, this is the Bhagirathi offtake. This is the schematic illustration of the changed angle of obliquity of the Bhagirathi offtake point, and you can see that the Ganga River has shifted between 1928 and 1967 here, and the orientation of the offtake point or the entrance of the discharge point has completely changed for the Bhagirathi River course. Normally what happens for a distributary course, the entrance of discharge normally occurs pointing towards downstream, but in this case, it has oriented towards upstream right now. So the situation has changed, and you can see these from these panels also, that the orientation of the offtake point has changed completely. And because of this, it's a struggle for the discharge to entry through these points. And this is the present situation now here, Khejuri Tola on panel C, you can see. So this is the offtake point of the Bhagirathi River, and the flow is absolutely minimal. In fact, there is absolutely no flow contributed from the Ganga channel, as the principal channel of Ganga has moved towards east. So what do we get here? This tiny channel, it is there because of the backflow from the feeder canal through this old ancient route. Okay. Now, this is the feeder canal I have shown here on panel A. This is basically constructed after following the Farakka barrage construction, along with the Farakka barrage construction in 1975. And this, because of this feeder canal, the Bhagirathi River is still flowing, at least on its non-tidal course. So it is completely aided by the Ganga Ganga discharge through this artificial Farakka barrage project. Otherwise, there would not have been any kind of discharge. And this is the Farakka barrage, and you can see the diversion of feeder canal here at Farakka, Murshidabad. And these are some of the photographs of the feeder canal, and this is the present situation of the offtake point. You can see the dry river bed of the Bhagirathi in the photograph taken 8 years ago, and there is no water whatsoever. And this is the cross sectional. This is the cross section of the that particular area, and you can see here the Bhagirathi course. Now this is actually like a elongated water body. There is no flow. So this is the offtake point in figure B, you can see. And the Bhagirathi channel has improved significantly after the commissioning of the Farakka barrage project. And this is near Murshidabad town. And on 1967, this is the situation of the river, and this is the situation now in 2010. And moving to the other distributaries. So we have different distributaries apart from the Bhagirathi Hooghly, which are not assisted by any artificial project like Farakka barrage. And now we have this Bhairav river, for which we can see that the offtake point has shifted in every mapping or surveying year. So the red mark is the offtake point of 1774 here, the red dot, and you can see none of the map is showing the same offtake. Okay. Now this is the seasonally active Bhairav offtake, and the flow is very sluggish through the non-monsoon months, and this is the monsoon time situation. So the area you can see during the monsoon months is almost perpetually flooded. And this is the situation during the non-monsoon months, especially figure panel B, you can see the situation of the river. And this is the Jolongi course. This is far worse. This is having far worse condition as compared to the Bhairav offtake. And there is no discharge whatsoever through this original Jolongi offtake. So if you go there, you may not find any river course. And this is the situation now for the upper Jolongi near the offtake point. And because the Jolongi flow is significantly affected in its upper course, the flow is continuing in its lower course because it is aided by the Bhairav flow. So it is basically what we see in Krishnanagar or Chapra, these areas, the Jolongi river is practically maintained by the Bhairav flow. So this is the situation of the Bhairav Jolongi confluence point, and you can see gradually the Bhairav discharge is practically taken over the Jolongi discharge. And right now, there is almost no discharge through this Jolongi river. If you see the bottom right panel, there is practically no discharge through this river. Now going into the next river, Mathabhanga. This is another important river, and the offtake point is located right in the at the border of India and Bangladesh, and it is also getting affected by the frequent channel shifting of the Ganga river. And Mathabhanga is practically used to Mathabhanga was practically used to maintain the flow of Ichamoti, as it used to take the entire Ichamoti used to take the entire discharge of Mathabhanga prior to the this. Basically, the Churni river is dug up during 16th century, 16th and 17th century. So after that, the flow got divided into these two channels. And initially, there was significant flow through Ichamati river, but slowly the flow has become significantly decreased through the Ichamati course. And you can see here, the Ichamati at the Ichamati offtake, the river bed is raised significantly due to sedimentation at this Ichamati offtake point, you can see, and practically there is no flow during the non-monsoon months. Only during floodlight situation you have some kind of flow, like the lower panel you can see in these two sets of photographs. And talking about the other paleo distributaries of this western part of the delta, so we have this Gobra distributary. So there is no contribution from the offtake point. And this is the water you have here is basically the rainwater, the stored rainwater. So these channels are basically behaving like an elongated water body. So the same situation is there for the Shialmari river course, as you can see here. And then we have this Jamuna. Now this Jamuna river is basically the last cross stream between the Bhagirathi Hooghly river and the Ichamati river. And this river is also, there is no flow whatsoever. And talking about the shrinkage of river courses, now the cutoffs are basically showing how these river courses are decaying. Now, it is the decay of the river courses is not there for the Bhagirathi Hooghly course because it is assisted by the Farakka barrage project. And you can see significant cutoff generations are there in the last 40-50 years. And you see here, the cutoff generation was there in the pre-Farakka period, and post-Farakka period, we have a few cutoffs. And this is one of the famous cutoffs at Purvostholi. It is called Chupir Chor. So it happened in 1990. So talking about the comparison between the river cutoffs and the nearest channel, now if you compare the cross-section area, there is not much difference between the cutoff cross-section and the river cross-section area. Yes, there is not much difference between these two areas, but same cannot be said for the other rivers of this region. Like for Bhairav Jalangi course, we have cutoffs, but those cutoff widths are much larger than the actual river courses, the nearest river courses. As you can see here, 2 or 3 times are the cutoff widths, as we find here. And the Ichamati cutoffs, now one significant thing is that Ichamati, it has about near about 40 cutoffs. And in its non-tidal course, all the cutoffs occurred prior to the mapping history. That means prior to 18th century, all the cutoffs has occurred. Okay, and if you compare the cutoff width and cross-section area with the present channel area, you can anticipate, you can gauge the relative ages of these channels. Now, comparing these cutoff cross-sections, as we start from the west, if we go towards east, so this is Notidanga Baur, then Arongdanga Baur, it has a lesser area in terms of cross-section, and then we have the tiniest of the channels is the Ichamati river. Then we move towards east, the cutoff areas are increasing, and the largest one is the Panchita Baur. So if we compare the estimated bankful discharge of this particular cutoff with the Ichamati channel, it is 20 times greater. Okay, and we have this Jamuna river, which I have talked about. Now you see 8 to 10 times at the cutoff widths as compared to the present channel width. Now these are the paleo channels of the study area, and you can see the present condition of the paleo channels in this particular study area. Okay, so all the channels are occupied. Obviously, anthropogenic activities are always affecting these areas, these channels, and these areas are very much affected by flood. And last of the most devastating floods was occurred in 2000, in the year 2000, when about 50% of this area was become flooded. And you can see from these images, so these blue and dark blue patches are basically the flood water. Okay, but in spite of such a large flood event, there is no change, no significant change if we consider the landforms of this region, major landforms of this region. Now talking about the encroachments, so we have here the Bhairav river. So this riverbed is practically encroached for agricultural activities. Then we have these sediment quarrying, then these brick lanes on panel C, you can see. So various activities are going on, which are also affecting the river courses. Now, moving towards the other part of the delta, the Brahmaputra delta, parallelly, another set of events were going in this particular segment. So these panels are basically showing the regional setting of the Brahmaputra river and its surroundings, especially the panel B and panel C. And there was an avulsion event that occurred from the last part of this 18th century and the latter part of 19th century. So for about 80 to 100 years, this particular avulsion event had occurred. Now we know about this Jamuna river in Bangladesh, and we all know that the Jamuna is practically taking all the Brahmaputra discharge. And it is referred in several books. I've seen that the Brahmaputra is actually the Jamuna in Bangladesh. It is written, but it is actually not. The Brahmaputra course was different. So it used to flow through this Sylhet basin. If you see panel B, so there is an old Brahmaputra course, which is the original course of the Sylhet basin. And in between, you can see the Madhupur terrace, which is practically dividing these two courses. Okay. And the Madhupur terrace is basically composed of the Brahmaputra sediment in the Pleistocene era, in the Pleistocene period. Okay. Now, the old Brahmaputra course, you can see here at the avulsion location at Dewanganj, and this is the Yamuna course. Now, this is the avulsion locality, and this light blue color, it is showing the old Brahmaputra course, which is not there, obviously. The course is very much tiny, as you can see from the dark blue channel here. And I'll show how this entire thing has changed. The entire course has changed. The last avulsion event, it has occurred in the last about 150 years ago. And now these panels are showing the area just above the avulsion location. And if you closely follow these panels, so you can see the Brahmaputra used to skirt through this Meghalaya plateau region here on the panel A, and slowly it has shifted westward to engulf the lower portion of the Tista course between 1830 to 34 and the last part of the latter part of the 19th century. And a few significant major flood events that occurred in 18th century also influenced these events. Now you can see on panel D, the course of Brahmaputra significantly shifted westward. Another set of events occurred here, that the augmentation of Tista discharge, the Tista shifted because of neotectonic movements and recurrent flood events. The Tista has shifted its course in the latter part of 18th century towards Brahmaputra. Earlier it used to carry all the discharge through different distributaries in the Ganga course, and after that it shifted its course towards Brahmaputra. So these two events practically influence this avulsion to occur. Now here the entire scenario is shown. The avulsion locality you can see here. And this red mark is the basically the location of Dewanganj where this avulsion has occurred. Now these maps are indicating the deterioration of the eastern branch here, the old Brahmaputra, and the enhancement of the western channel or the Yamuna. So it actually took place gradually and did not complete until the latter part of the 19th century. So the process continued through 1855 to 1860 and was largely completed by the early part of the 20th century, as you can see in the D panel. And now the old Brahmaputra remains cut off from the main channel during the drier parts of the year. So this is the schematic diagram, which is showing the avulsion event. Now A1 and A2 are the pre-avulsion and post-avulsion situation. Okay, and this is the Brahmaputra channel, the old Brahmaputra channel, just 5 kilometers downstream from the discharge location, the avulsion location. And this is the comparison of width of these two channels near the avulsion location, and you can see how the width of the old Brahmaputra river has changed significantly as compared to the Jamuna. So
hello, Shayantan, please
just 2-3 minutes.
Try
please.
to finish.
Yeah, just 2-3 minutes I'll take. So this is the present situation now, and you can see the 4.5 kilometer width we have for this Jamuna channel, and for old Brahmaputra the width is not even 500 meters. So this is another place called Sirajganj. This red mark is showing Sirajganj town, which is 100 kilometers downstream from the avulsion location, and you can see Yamuna was initially a single thread channel and it has become a braided channel. And this is a very famous place. This yellow dot is practically showing the location of Gwalanda, where these two large rivers are meeting, the Ganga and the Brahmaputra. And one significant thing is there, in spite of getting so much discharge from Brahmaputra in the later periods, the Ganga width has not changed significantly. And then this is the downstream part of the old Brahmaputra, and you can see from A panel to D panel how the entire river system has deteriorated. Okay, and this orange place, so this orange point is indicating the place called Toke, from where the Brahmaputra discharge is taken away by this Shitalakha river. And you can see here, this is almost the same situation like what we have for this Ichamoti river. So compare Mathabhanga with this Brahmaputra course and Ichamoti with this Brahmaputra course towards right. And Shitalakha is basically the Chuni course. So the same kind of thing has happened here. And if we compare these panels, these are basically the DEMS, digital elevation models.
Please come to the conclusion, please.
Yeah. These are basically showing the ancient river channels, and these white tiny channels are basically showing the present river course, and you have the imprints of the old river course from these panels. Okay, and these are the discharge data, historical discharge data we have. And if we closely look into these parts from 1765 up to this 1850, you can see there are significantly higher discharge events in these years. So practically these events practically influence the avulsion to occur. So there is significant difference between these two delta parts. So we have for the what we have for the western part of the delta, the offtakes are deteriorating, and unless we have any project like Farakka barrage, the rivers will slowly deteriorate, and all the rivers may become paleochannels in the later period. But we have significant changes that occurred in the Brahmaputra course naturally, and it may happen in future. And during the Holocene period, it happened 6 times. So roughly in every 1800 years, the course of Brahmaputra has shifted, and it will shift again in the coming years, we can say. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Shayantan. So this is after Shayantan, we have the last speaker for this session, Dr. Sandipon Ghosh. Sandipon, you can join, and Shayantan, you can stop your screen sharing. Dr. Sandipon Ghosh, Assistant Professor in Geography, Chandrapur College, West Bengal. So Sandipon, you can start your presentation.
Okay. Thanks, Saidul Islam and Professor Somasif Gupta. First of all, I apologize to all about my weak network connection, and it can face problem to have. My topic is dimension of anthropogenic geomorphology in the phobia studies, considering the emerging issues. Geomorphic and hydrologic change is an important component of the Anthropocene, having variation in space and time. Presently, global climatic along with human modification of Earth's surface has immense impact on the landforms mainly in India and across the tropical countries. Many scholars pointed out that the significance of human action depends on in comparison with natural change, how they relate to the relaxation time of geomorphic system, and how long the duration they are, and how frequent they are. Before going into the deep discussion, first of all, here's the present, the Paul Cruzen Prize winner introduced the term Anthropocene in 2002, presenting a paper on nature is geology of mankind. He preferred to ascribe this present situation to form a geological era of human domination. Cruzen says that in Anthropocene, 18th century, when the analysis of air trapped in the polar ice showing the beginning of growing global concentration of CO2 and methane. And we can divide this Anthropocene epoch in 3 stages. First of all, the industrial era, 1800 to 1945, and after the 1945 to 2005. the development of high technology and urbanization, dam building. This is the expression of economic activity, and perhaps we are facing last stage, the pupil quite aware of the extent of human activity. Before going into the anthropogeomorphology, this is the some important research work presented here. The most important work is the book Andrew Goodyear and Weil, that Geomorphology in the Anthropocene, and presently a recent book Rhodes separately on the human impact on the river dynamics, and many other authors are more studied on mainly the of river channel dynamics in the different river system of the India to know the anthropogenic impact on the each fluvial system. Fluvial system is considered as the most sensitive element of the Earth's surface, because any shift in any change in the maybe the natural or anthropogenic in the components of the physical environment can instigate a rapid response from the fluvial forms and process. And this change is to the assemblage of geomorphic unit along a reach to record a marked shift in the river character and behavior. To understand the ongoing impact, the changes in and hydrology, we have to identify those changes to know the fluvial sensitivity in the Anthropocene. And the landscape sensitivity is regarded as the potential for the probable magnitude system in response to external effects and ability of the fluvial system to render this effect. Now there are two types of human role in changing the fluvial landscape: indirect effect and direct effect. We are quite aware of the direct effect of dams and reservoir, channelization, navigation, river sediments, and the most effective indirect effect is changes in land use, land cover, urbanization, deforestation, etc. External pressure and the internal pressure are mainly demarcated the climate change, land use change. This pressure on the fluvial dynamics, mostly the lateral disconnectivity and longitudinal disconnectivity in the form of variation of stream flow and sediment starvation. Demographic response on each compartment of the fluvial system, with the hill slope to valley flows to channel. In anthropology, essential to realize the system complex in the river system. It is in no chance that the system have react as a simple linear problem, but currently the many studies reflect that the response to AB disturbance is very complex. There are 6 conditions may be observed in the system. This is no response may be detected as fluvial system absorbs the impact. Next is or instantaneously. Third is the part of progressive change. River may respond rapidly as per the first disturbance, and change may be, that is, breaching of the threshold and the change to a new equilibrium condition, and change may be lagged. An equivalent response may be observed. The Gregory put some questions which became the pave the way of geomorphic dimensions about the anthropogeomorphic discipline growth. What is the change and what will the change? It becomes the process studies more important in this question, and how much change is occur and how long it will. It goes the time of dam urbanization impact, the conceptual model, and impact assessment. When it will start and finish. These questions on the basin and spatial variation of the impact. Yes.
Actually, your sound is not clear.
Shandipon, actually sound is not coming, Hello?
Hello?
Shandipon, your audio is actually breaking up. Okay, so we cannot hear you. That is what sir is telling.
Okay.
So, hello?
So I have to stop that.
No, stop করতে বলছি না, মানে can you
I think what you could do, please stop your screen sharing and see whether the condition improve, and then you can just give an oral presentation. Sometimes because of screen sharing, I know the resolution or
Now it is.
You have network problem.
Yes, yes, I have a strong network problem here.
Would you please stop your screen sharing for a moment? And could you please speak? Could you speak now?
Yes, sir.
Or just you can speak for a few minutes. Let us see what happens. Just see your screen and speak.
Okay, okay, sir. My line question is that forces and natural resources. Geomorphic forces and terrain can affect man and escalating the problem of hazard and disaster. Already degraded the land water ecosystem impact and it create area vulnerability in all the region. And man utilization of geomorphic agent and man can use it is rigorously to exploit these natural resources from the surface. The discipline like to study the man-land for interaction for environmental planning and management. Many papers of the published in the research article shows that the climate change, which is driven by the human impact or human gas emission, has direct impact on river profile. A paper published in the Nature, it shows that based on the study of that hydrological regime of each long profile shows tendency to become straight, and straight becomes means the aridity in their context. So climatic signal are all east into the long profile, and developed by many IIT scientists that across the catchment of peninsular India shows that catchment displayed hydrological non-resilient to climatic warming shift, and 37% of catchment are anthropogenic the climate change in present decade. And growing population pressure is also observed in the disconnectivity of the landscape and in mostly in the fans like Koshi fan, that 40% of has been observed in the nature to create a flood risk in the land. The dam and reservoir is the most crucial impact on the dam's impact on the channel morphometry and the channel stream flow. It is found that in the Damodar River that after the dam construction, the flood are more could become less from the month of August to month of September, October, because the growing is very crucial to regulate the DVC in the time of peak monsoon season to flood moderation. And now the agony side of DVC dam is evidenced by inhabitants of Damodar floodplain. After dam construction, each person vanished from this region, but flood is now modified its character, promoting low peak and long duration, more than 1 week, due to drainage delinking of Paleo channel of the main river and the inability of the regulated discharge due to reservoir siltation. From the pollution perspective, the 68 kilometer stretch from the Panchetda downstream up to Durgapur barrage, the main industrial belt of eastern India, covering the major important industrial city like Kulti, Borakar, Asansol, Raniganj, Durgapur, which have water quality of the river. In this span, we have 49 towns, 732 coal mines, 1 which are having direct and indirect impact to modify the physical environment of the Damodar. And about the environmental flow, what is the environmental flow? Environmental flow is the minimum flow required in the fluvial system to maintain the ecological health. So river needs water, debris, sediment to ensure that aquatic systems stay healthy, provided benefits to people. Water impoundment by the dam and reservoir for irrigation can devastate the ecosystem and livelihood downstream. The loss of biodiversity of native alternative flow regime or flow variability. It has been found that the egg-laying period of fish have been transformed due to dam construction. The most of the flood peaks are observed in the August month, but after dam construction, the peaks are variable and the peaks may be month of August or the month of September or the month of October. So there is the chance of extinction of local regional disconnectivity, and many of the species like fishing cat, smooth-coated otter, Gangetic dolphin, ghorial, Ganges shark are facing the near threat due to this anthropogenic stress. And of dam, it is found that daily influx of sewage, industrial polluted water are stuck in the Durgapur barrage, creating an heavy industrial thermal effluents are mixing with this river directly in the stretch in the stabilized island of the Damodar. Sand mining is one of the key important driver to and from far away, creating local fluvial incision and aggregation, and inchallenge sedimentation is quite observed in this Damodar river. So there is a chance of fluvial metamorphosis in this river, that after dam construction, the immediate downstream of dam, the bed are inside, but upstream of dam, more sedimentation and promoting the river towards tendency to breeding. It is found that the river become narrower and the active part of the channel has become more narrower for promoting abundant, and these terraces are intensively used by the settlement and agricultural land use, which create a river at the downstream section. So the anthropogenic geomorphology of discipline has ample scope to study this the tropical river, creating more breakthrough research using etc. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Sandeepan. Knowing your past history and my personal experience with you, I know that you were, I mean, your presentation was could have been better with had we could hear and visualize all what you wanted to say. So unfortunately, we are handicapped by the technological glitches. So for me, had these glitches would not have been there, then we would have been enriched. Anyways, thanks a lot. So Shahidul sir, all the papers which were slated to be presented in this session have been presented. So I would like to request any participant, if you have any question on any paper or presentation in this session, so please go ahead, because I could not find any question in the chat box. So yeah, since we have,
I think I have another request. If you do not have any personal problem, I should request all of you to just start your video so that we can see each other, and you can ask a question to the presenter, you know. So this could be one of the interactive time, next 5 minutes or 5 minutes. I think you should have some, you just ask the question to the presenters. Let's just have some interactive phase.
Yes, sir. So that's what I am suggesting. So
Yeah.
if there are any questions from the participants or so since nobody is coming ahead, so I'll just start a question. So Priyanka, I mean, are you there?
Yes.
Priyanka, I have a question. I mean, your paper was extremely inspiring. So what I wanted to know is that I mean, the topics which you have shown before us are really, I mean, a new domain in the field of physical geography, specifically geomorphology. So in your presentation, you spoke about something, whether you prepare your own dam of micro resolution, because we know that I mean, high resolution dams are very costly. So can you make it clear whether, I mean, how can we prepare dams? I mean, are you speaking about DGPS survey or photogrammetry? I mean,
I was speaking about close range photogrammetry, which is using a method called structure from motion, where overlapping photographs are taken. Either it is from a handheld ground platform, that is a handheld camera, or it is taken from a UAV, that is a drone. And then we use the SFM method, structure from motion method, and then we combine those methods and we prepare a digital elevation model of the area. Of course, we take a number of location points or ground control points within the places where we are photographing, so that we can input them in the model, and we can georeference it properly and get the measurements properly. That is
okay.
what we do.
Okay, now it's clear. So okay, thank you, Priyanka. So if you have, I mean, participants, you are requested to go ahead. If you have any question to Priyanka or any other presenter.
I think there is no question here.
No,
I have a question, but as I am chairing that, I may address that when I'll be talking. You know, so
sir, then you can go ahead, sir. Over to you, sir. You can.
Thank you very much. I think before I start, I have a small question to Ms. Datta. You have explained how we can use remote sensing in paleo channel study, you know. So, but the lecture is basically theoretical, you know. Have you applied that particularly yourself to detect the paleo channel? That is a very
Yes, actually the study has been started, and prior to our study we have done a lot of literature review and studied the works already done in India and in international level. So just I have shown a glimpse how the advanced remote sensing techniques can be used for monitoring paleo channels and paleo or geoarchaeology.
Thank you, because this is one of the area where I'm interested. I work on the quaternaries and paleo environment. So I think this is maybe the last person. I should speak few, but not taking much time. Today, out of the 9 presentations, I think 8 were presented. Among these 8 papers, 3 were basically conceptual and theoretical, which are very, very good input for the beginners and students. And 3 papers are critical review, which is amazing, and lots of informations come from there, and 2 are research based. So among these papers, it covers a wide variety of issues. For example, engineering aspect of a dam or embankment, paleo river, that is the paleo channels, then river morphometry, and anthropogenic geomorphology, particularly in the context of transportation and fluvial system. New tectonics and the highland geomorphology. I am a person of lowland, so I very little understand about the highland geomorphology, but I could understand and how new tectonics are related with that kind of geomorphological form and deform. And fluvial eco geomorphology, which is basically an emerging concept. and very, very interesting and very, very critical study. And finally, the GBM delta and how these rivers are shrinking and migrating in the GBM delta. From this discussion, I think I found three major gaps where the geologists or archaeologists, anthropologists, and geographers can give new new study. One is the ecogeomorphology. This is an emerging issue, ecogeomorphology. The explanation was given in the context of fluvial environment. It could be even floodplain environment or even beyond that, even highland environment. So this is a very, very important and emerging concept in geomorphology. Second is anthropogeomorphology. It's wide variety of work can be done. Two examples are given. One is from transport and another is from fluvial. In our context, even your context, I think in the lower delta country, urban area, if you see the peripheral area of the urbans, all the geomorphology is being changed by the people. Just filling the lowlands and making their own highlands. So what I used to say, man-made geomorphology. And even the coastal geomorphology is rapidly changing. Undulation, is tilting down because of human intervention. This is another very emerging area where geomorphologists can work. And finally, what Dr. was talking about, the paleogeomorphology, paleo channel, paleo environment. I am just facing few difficulties because we have two terraces, Barren Tract and Madhupur Tract, as well as of Pleistocene period. So there are many, many evidences of paleo channel. And if you go the upper side of the GBM delta, there are many records of paleo channel. This is another emerging area where the geomorphologists of both sides, India and Bangladesh, can work together to unveil the evidences of paleo channel. Once we can understand the paleo channel, we can infer many of the incidents that happened in the past, particularly during the Holocene. So I'm not going further details. It was an amazing session and very, very interesting session. I like to thank the coordinator, Dr. Shen Gupta, for his kind assistance and well coordination. Thank you very much to conduct this session. And thanks to all the presenters and the participants. And finally, I think Dr. Aznarul is there. So thank you very much for inviting and me as a chair and to the organizing committee and for this beautiful session. Thank you very much. I will be seeing the next session. Thank you from my side. Dr. Aznarul, would you please open your video and say something, or we can conclude?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just a moment.
Okay. I'm extremely sorry. I cannot sit continuously 3 hours, but I am sitting continuously 3 hours. Anyway, yes, please. Okay.
Hey, am I audible and visible?
Both. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much to all of you, all the presenters, honorable presenters, session chair, Professor Saidul Islam sir, Dr. Shen Gupta sir. I had scope to listen some of the presentation delivered over here, and really I am enlightened to know the various aspects of the river and related sciences from the different disciplinary boundaries, from geological science to remote sensing GIS, social science, and the geographical sciences. Really, the lectures will be the treasure for our students and for the future research scholars. Some of my PhD scholars, they attended the lectures and they have already given me feedback that we are really benefited from such kind of the lectures. And these contents are already recorded. If you wish, you can also listen to those lectures because it has been YouTube streamed already. So these lectures, especially Priyanka's lecture, I listened to him and the geomorphological perspective, it's of late trained in geomorphology, and how he has shown that triangular diagram and the pyramidal diagram, geology, biology, and hydrology, all these three things together, and ultimately ecogeomorphology, how it's being constituted. He has shown with very exquisite examples and cases. So the other cases I have also seen, All the lectures, Shubhendu has shown the impact of transportation. So I couldn't be able to attend all the lectures. However, I hope all the lectures have been equally relevant to the audience, and definitely it will be helpful for their future orientation. Anyway, I'm again thankful to all of you for accepting my invitation. Dipanet Madam here, Shunipa Madam, I can see Shantanda, Priyanga, Shomashi, all, Shahidul Islam sir. I reached out to all of you with the and request that please accept our invitation and to deliver the talks. So anyway, that lectures have been very fruitful, and you accepted my invitation. I'm really thankful to all of you. Without any kind of the hesitation, you really responded in an overwhelming manner. So that is a great pleasure for me, and definitely for the foundation of the practicing geographers also. Thank you so much. With these few words, I will request to Dr. Shomashi Sengupta to conclude the session. Or any participants, if you have any kind of the observations or the opinions that has already been opened by our session chair, Professor Shahidul Islam, sir has already requested us. If you wish to share your views regarding this, apart from the questions, answers, or queries, whatever, any kind of the views that you can exchange, because in the morning there was a platform, and Professor Singh has set a motion between the Indo-Bangladesh exchange of views and ideas regarding the Sundarban of the deltaic processes. So if you wish to collaborate, if you wish to exchange your views between the Indian and Bangladesh, though majority of the participants or the I'll say the speakers from India, however, our chairperson is from Bangladesh, and he is a very active and dedicated researcher. I know him personally because we were working together for 2 or 3 projects. So, and he has also CRU coastal research units, and he regularly organizes the workshops, seminars, e-conferences, whatever you can say. And you can also join that conferences. Sarah will definitely tell you. And regarding the future collaboration regarding the deltaic processes, as Sarah was saying, that we are lying in the low-lying areas. So that's why we are having a little bit lesser concept on the upper catchment areas. Still, I will say that the river basin is an integrated concept, and Sarah knows very well all those things. And definitely, Sarah will also say something regarding the Indo-Bangladesh exchange of views regarding this. And any other party speakers, honorable speakers, you can also share your views with our chairperson, sir, and among the delegates, speakers, and participants are also listening to us. If they have anything to, with the permission of the chair and the permission of the session coordinator, already it's a 5:10, so we don't have much time. If any kind of the queries or any kind of the suggestions, any kind of the observations for our future regarding this exchange of the knowledge, as well as for anything suggestions for the Foundation of the Practicing Geographers, because Foundation of Practicing Geographers every year organizes at least once a year international or the national webinar or conferences, etc. So if any kind of the suggestions or feedback is there, please communicate to us whenever you will be filling up the registration form there. Also, you can say over here, I can listen to you. It will be my pleasure. Okay, thank you.
I think according to the schedule, officially the session is closed. But as the host has kept the line on, you can now just share informally whatever you believe. Let us
yes.
You know, just an informal discussion.
Yes,
in the morning session, I know a good proposal came that it is actually whenever we talk about the hydrodynamics, or the natural dynamics. This political boundary, it is an artificial alignment, but the hydrodynamics, it has no political boundary. It is from source to sink, is basically a single catchment. What is happening in Bangladesh would have not been developed, even not been born or not been grown, if the sediment did not come from Himalaya. So we were born from Himalaya, and the source of sediment is Himalaya, and the river is the architect. So the architect is river and the mother is the Himalaya. The sediment comes from the Himalaya. So there is a link. I was reading a paper, to know the source of origin of Himalaya. People are investigating the sediment from the deep sea of the Bay of Bengal or even the Indian Ocean, because the sediment deposited in the deep Indian Ocean bottom will give the signal what happened millions of years ago in the Himalaya. So can you imagine? So source to sing is a single catchment, single entity, single idea. So we have to think in a very collective way from our point, and it should be multidisciplinary. I can see that the geologist and the archaeologist, anthropologist, social scientist, it's not a single body agenda. And science now become more critical because of its multidisciplinary approach. I should just say, if you think physical geography totally as an engineering point of view, it is useless. Physical geography has to be, geomorphology has to be considered the issues in the context of social demand. Then it is a breeze. So we are all, as a geographer or geologist or environmentalist, we are in the same boat with a different paddle. So we have to continue the paddle to reach the boat to the goal. So yeah, we're together. And particularly Dr. Patel, I'm very much impressed with your critical review, and I'm getting more interest. It might happen I'll get involved. I involve many of my students to the concept you have developed, or I might make a link with you using your email.
Yes, you can always write in and I will respond.
Yeah. So it's a small world. We'll be keeping touch with each other.
Sir, one thing, Priyank sir, is very popular in the schools because I was in university as a member, and then he moved to President's University, and still the students recalls when Priyank sir will come here to take our classes. And this is one side. Another side, he's a very dedicated fellow. Every time he works, every time. And almost if I say a day, may not be, it is incorrect. Almost a day, every day almost, new paper is coming out with the students.
Anyway, I think I can see the face.
And few days back, he has the paper in Art Science Review that is having impact factor above 12, if I'm not wrong. So that concept is basically a Russell model, soil erosion estimation model, and there is some kind of the modifications they have suggested. Really, it's illuminating to the researcher, and really very novel concepts they have provided with some databases. So he's a very dedicated fellow. Shantanda is here. Maybe Shantanda is here. Shantanda is working very nice, and he has supervised his students. Few days back, I went to our examination, and I saw that Dr. Shantanda is a nice manner. And I didn't have the much time to listen to him today. I'm unfortunate, but I am sure, I'm pretty sure that till date, he has produced so many good works. And today's presentation, I have seen a couple of slides, initial slides, and Ganga Brahmaputra Meghna Delta's evolution with the help of the satellite images and image processing techniques. It's really a very good presentation. Actually, all the presenters, I missed majority of the presentation of these sessions. All the presentation, I hope, really, Shunipa Madam's presentation, she has shown the Buttes formation or North Bengal's rivers condition, hydrogeomorphic conditions, and their responses to hydrogeomorphic behavior. So that is also excellent. So really, we are thankful to all of you, because already I have mentioned it would be the treasure for our students, the lectures which you have delivered on this platform. So Priyanka, would you share something, Shunipa Madam, Shubhendu, because we can exchange our views. Already Chairman Sir has told that, and Coordinator Sir, the session is closed officially, but we can discuss after the official decorum. So, just take it as the unofficial decorum right now, and we can discuss it. If you have anything to say, you can share, please.
Would you mind if I take a leave, because we are half an hour ahead?
Yeah. But we have to wind up by 5:30. It's already 5:15. So we have another 15 minutes. If you wish to, if the chairperson sir and the coordinator sir, they say, then we can do it. Anyway, Shunipa madam, you are about to say something, please.
No, it's okay. Carry on.
No, madam. আমাদের এবং আমরা এখানে বোধহয় যারা আছি সবাই বোধহয় বাংলা বুঝি, সবাই বোধহয় বাঙালি।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, তা তো বিশুদ্ধ বাঙালি।
এবং আমরা সবাই এপার বাংলা ওপার বাংলা এই আবার এক জায়গাতে। সায়ন্তনদা, প্রিয়াঙ্কা, তোমাদের কিছু ভিউজ থাকলে প্লিজ একটু শেয়ার করো।
আমার ভিউজ নেই, আমার অ্যাকচুয়ালি একটু অনুমতি চাইছি, আমার একটু বেরিয়ে যেতে হবে। হ্যাঁ,
আমরা মনে হয় সেশনটা ক্লোজ করে দেই। অনেকক্ষণ অল দ্য বেস্ট সবাইকে। অনেক
সোমাশিস দা।
ইয়েস আজনারুল।
সো from our end, এবার তুমি
আনজারুল সাহেব,
over to you.
আনজারুল সাহেব, আমি একটু কানে কানে আর কি একটা কথা বলবো আর কি। মানে এটা একেবারে পার্সোনাল। টুমরো, আগামীকাল আমার 60তম জন্মদিন। So just before one day of my 16th.
Okay. So what a great match! What a great match! Tomorrow I have also. আমারও কালকে জন্মদিন।
আপনার সাথে আপনারা আমার জন্য প্রার্থনা করবেন।
Sure. Wish you happy birthday in advance.
Sure.
আমারও জন্মদিন চাই।
Happy birthday in advance.
Chair and convener.
Exactly.
I don't know how old are you, but I am 60.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Happy birthday.
ভালো থাকবেন স্যার। Wish you happy birthday in advance. And কোনদিন বাংলাদেশে গেলে স্যার আমাদের মানে পার্টি ডিউ রইলো আর কি।
আপনি আমাকে খাওয়াবেন, আমি আপনাকে খাওয়াবো। ওকে,
বলবে
অল দ্য বেস্ট।
ঠিক আছে, হ্যাপি বার্থডে।
সোমাশিস দা তাহলে তুমি ফর্মালি ক্লোজ করে দাও দাদা প্লিজ।
ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ আজনারুল। So
thank you Ajnarul and Shomashish.
On behalf of the Foundation of Practicing Geographers, I sincerely express my gratitude to Professor Shahidul Islam. Sir, you are just excellent, staying, patiently hearing all the papers, and your constructive suggestions has, even at this age, has proved that age is not a factor. And we sincerely pray that when we reach your age, we can be as inspiring as you. Even 50% would be sufficient for us, sir. And thanks a lot to all the speakers of this session. We have been really enriched by your valuable research, and it will be inspired to follow your research in the future at different other places of West Bengal and India. So thank you all. Thank you, Devobroto Mondol. Your excellent handling of the technical intricacies has helped me and Professor Shahidul Islam to conduct this session. I mean, thanks are due to you, to the extreme possible extent. So thank you all. So I think, sir, we can close this session.